This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Finance for the Town of North Haven. Today's Wednesday, March 20th at 6:30 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Tonight we have our regular agenda, which would be the reports primarily, and then more importantly, after that, we will finalize the expenditure side of the budget for the oncoming fiscal year 2025. So why don't we start with the minutes, please? Any comments on the minutes? Okay, if not, I'll take a motion, please.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Why don't we move on to the reports? Let's please start with the revenue side.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, before we move on, just in terms of old business, have you received any correspondence to our Board of Finance email?
I have not, and in fact, since I had not gotten any, I actually shot Val an email saying, I haven't gotten any. Could she please check with IT to make sure that it was working? I actually did not hear back from Val, but I'm assuming that was a yes.
Okay.
Could you please check the spam folder?
I do have junk mail, Mike, and actually I do check it now and then, and I have not seen any. So I'm actually a little surprised too, to be honest with you, Nancy. Okay, so back to the revenue, if you don't mind, please.
Yes.
I have a question. It's a minor question, but the adult education, since it's North Haven and Hamden, how does that work? Is there a split? How does that?
Where is that, please? Page
It
two?
is the first page. It's under the
Third
third
category.
topic.
Oh, I see it, yeah.
Date of CT.
Yeah, because it's Hamden, it's been changed to Hamden North Haven, so how does that work as far as the revenue?
It doesn't affect, that's our revenue.
Is it, yeah, but how do they determine what is North Haven's versus Hamden?
Well, I think Hamden gets their share of this also.
Is it a split or?
No, that's ours, and the Hamden gets whatever they get, so.
Okay.
Anyone else have any comments on the revenue? I did note that the tax revenue is at 98.2%, which,
Yes, excellent.
I saw that too. I was
Yep.
going to
Yeah,
ask
excellent.
about that. And going along with that, I've also noticed the interest in liens at, it's a big number, 588,000 when we had only budgeted 475. So,
actually, the other thing, Nancy, I talked to Rich, who talked to Gary. I think we only billed for the personal property this month, and I believe he sent out in excess of $300,000 worth of bills. So we should be seeing that coming in, hopefully, and if we get that number, it'd be twice what we budgeted.
What, for personal property?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. But the interest in liens, the question being, since we're over budget in revenue this year, well, is that a trend that is expected to continue next year?
good question.
Federal Reserve is predicting rate cuts of about 3 times, 1.25%, Mike.
Okay.
All right, any other comments, questions on revenue?
On the second page, just two quick questions. We have both the Quinnipiac University, $300,000, as well as the debt service reserve. And I'm just wondering, when should we expect the Quinnipiac money? And at what point will we make the decision about utilizing the debt service reserve money?
I'll let Mike confirm, but my understanding is that Quinnipiac University money is not coming in this year.
There will be no Quinnipiac University money coming in this year. We're
Oh.
working with them to get it for next year.
Okay.
And the debt
Glad I asked.
reserve, we usually make that decision at the end of the
That's
year.
exactly right.
So literally after the books are closed, or at what point?
Well, I think that's in the same category as the other items on page 1 that we've talked
Okay.
about in previous meetings, right? The
Yes.
special fund transfers and and the cash surplus unappropriated.
Right, I think this last year was only the first year in which it was actually a decision. So, this will be the first time in which this will be an actual decision. I think it's just been a foregone conclusion that if we budget a source of revenue, that we're going to collect that, whether, even if it's from ourselves. So, but you're saying that this will be made at the same time as the other sources
Yes.
that are on the first page in terms of the transfers from the general fund. Okay.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, expenses.
I have a question about personal policy expenses.
Page?
Page 6, the reserve for accrued benefits and the fire department.
Yes, this actually was an error when they were paying out accrued benefits in a wrong line. That has to go to contract obligations. It will be fixed by next time.
Okay.
Yeah, because the contractual obligations has been 0 to date, correct?
Yes,
So that's an error as well.
yes.
Got it. I have a question on page 9, I believe it is, yes. No, I take that back. First page 8. Under police, the very first line is personnel part-time, and it's budgeted at $80,000. And I was led to believe that these are for the 4 part-time dispatchers. However, if you look across the line, it appears as though they really have not been paid, and that the percentage used of that line item is only 9.6%. I'm assuming that that's an error,
I'll look into that.
or could they have been paid from some other line?
I don't think so.
Okay. And then, related to that, on page 9, again, still within police, about 2/3 of the way down, dispatcher expense. Any idea what that refers to?
Dispatcher expense, let's see.
$18,000. We've spent very little of it. The primary reason I'm asking is because the police chief has increased that number pretty substantially for the proposed budget, so I just need to understand what it really refers to.
I'm sorry, Nancy, was the dispatcher expense on the same page? Or was that the next?
It's on page
It's on
9,
Page
Oh, nine.
9.
mm-hmm. Towards
Yeah,
the
I will
bottom.
look into that for you.
I got it, thank you.
Okay,
I know we've had many coming in and leaving as well, so I'm not sure. I'll look into it.
Was that for an upgrade of equipment?
Dispatchers, no, I believe it's more,
It's more personnel, isn't it?
right.
Personnel.
And I think he was doing overtime to try to,
That's probably what's
Fill
happening.
those
They're short
positions,
staffed,
yeah.
and then that's why he's having more overtime.
okay. Because he does have an overtime line too, so that's why I'm a little surprised. He wants to just keep that separate, I guess. Okay, but if you could look into that.
Yes.
And then on page 11, under transfer station and recycling, again, towards the very bottom of the page, there's a line item, disposal of hazardous and regular waste. It's only at 23%, so I'm just wondering, is that something that's seasonal, Mr. Frida, or?
Yeah, it opens up sometime in May and runs through October. So we'll see that gather some steam in terms of expenditures when the facility opens up.
That's the Regional Water Authority.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. Did you have something?
No.
On page 13, unless somebody else wants to go, this is the question I ask every year at this time. Under streets and roads, we have amassed, I'm sure, quite the stockpile of winter maintenance supplies. And we have an encumbrance of $77,000. Is there a chance that we can either cancel that order or somehow recover
I think
that
some
money?
orders have been fulfilled. I did reach out, but he was looking into what can be canceled.
Okay.
Any other members? Mike, did you have a question?
No, I just, like to know if I could ask your indulgence to, about something back revenue related.
Sure, go ahead.
You know, I'm sorry, I'm just digesting the non-expectation of the Quinnipiac University payment of $300,000. I just want to know if there's anything that the first selectman can share as to why that.
I'd rather not, because there's issues there that I don't think it's appropriate for
Right.
me to discuss in
Okay.
public. The
Right.
bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, we're not getting it, but we're working, I am with the president of the university to hopefully get it in this coming fiscal year.
All right, just from the public's point of view, I know it's a gratuity, and it's, does Quinnipiac University have much in the way of taxable real estate in town? In the town of North Haven?
Well, there's houses that lease to postgraduate students that we collect the taxes on. There's very few homes that lease to undergraduate students, so we do collect that. In terms of the actual properties of which there's tax being paid, I don't have that information right now, but we get the majority of the income, or we get a portion of the pilot income because Quinnipiac University is here. So when you see a big pilot payment, it's largely due to Quinnipiac University because we get a percentage of that from the state. So if you want to equate it to, well, what properties do we get taxes on? We get pilot taxes from the state because of the postgraduate campus here over at off of Bassett Road.
Right.
Or Pool Road, Pool and Bradley.
And we do know that pilot payment is a lower percentage than we would wish that we would get from the state. In past years, that pilot has been reduced percentage-wise.
That pilot has been reduced percentage-wise, so at one point in time years ago, the state reimbursed 77%, now it's down to about 35%. However, when the university expands, they do pay building permits. So any construction that exists on the existing site, we get the building permit fees for that. Plus, as the value goes up on the existing campus, we get a larger percentage or more money because the value of the property has gone up. More money from the state, even though it's a reduced percentage on pilot.
Yeah, when Quinnipiac came here and then decided to expand the type of students that would be on the North Haven campus, I think along the way they asked for the town's cooperation with some of the things they wanted to do, and as part of that informal cooperative agreement, I think that's where their sort of payment in lieu of taxes or their supplement to the state pilot was offered. And to have this just continued sort of is somehow contrary to the, I think that the understanding that was there for a while.
Well, the understanding was never a commitment, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, it was
Never a commitment.
Right, right. I agree with that. But you do know that Yale University pays millions and millions of dollars to the city of New Haven that they do not have to pay.
So
But I think also, Mike,
was happening with Quinnipiac University.
well,
So-
I think,
Right.
and Mike, I'm sure can confirm this, when we started getting this money, Hamden was offered the money and put all kinds of conditions on it and then didn't get the money.
That's right.
Right.
So we were getting it and Hamden wasn't, even though I'm sure their taxable property from Quinnipiac is much higher than what we got in Northtown.
So what have we gotten from Quinnipiac University in addition to the $300,000 that we've been getting? We got the fire training facility almost fully underwritten by Quinnipiac University. We've gotten children's playscapes at Monterey School, Green Acres School, a playscape for handicapped and visually impaired children at Ridge Road School. I can go on and on about what they've given us. I'm not worried about this $300,000. We're gonna make it up at another time.
Yeah, well, those projects though, those were actually paid out of their $300,000 payment to us, right? Or
Some of them, and some of them were more money.
with supplement?
Supplement. Some of them were supplement, yes.
Okay,
So,
that's, all right, well, this is in reverse here. My expectation was that at some point that 300,000 number would go higher and not be discontinued. But okay, please do your best with town-gown relations to
sometimes, ladies and gentlemen,
this happen.
we tend to make things look easy. And this voluntary payment with Quinnipiac, we made it look easy. We've got a lot from them. But that doesn't mean it's easy. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And as I said earlier, as it relates to the question about why, I'm not going to say why tonight, because I think it's inappropriate for me to divulge the reasons on behalf of the university.
That's okay. When you can, please do it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions on the expenditure side? All right, then why don't we move over to the Board of Ed?
No, apparently they're gonna go out for bus service. We talk about having problems, so they're gonna send an RFP for a new vendor, so.
Well, they've been talking about
Yeah.
having problems for a while now.
Yeah, they've been having a lot of problems, especially this year, school year. There's been a lot of issues.
So it appears as though the Board of Ed is actually right on target with their budget at 68.5%. It also seems as though they've received a few unexpected grants for very small amounts that they've been able to apply to some line items that have gone over, such as the reimbursable wages for the high school preschool program and regular transportation and a tuition line. I guess what I don't understand is they're saying that they have booked about $6,000 in grant funding towards this regular transportation, and it says specifically to assist with the overage. But when you go to that particular line item, which is 510A for regular transportation, it's only about $4,000 over. So I guess it's not just paying for the overage, it's actually covering some of the budgeted operational costs.
So I see the 6,000, Nancy, what page is the,
So if you go to their budget and you look for, I guess
guess
it's
it has a number, right?
the
Oh,
second,
510A, it's 510A.
second page of their budget.
Right.
510A, regular transportation, you look across, you'll see available budget is a negative number, negative 4,189.
It's also on page 3, 510A, where they show available 2,885.
I think that's, it's on 2 pages?
Page 3.
My page 3 is the grand total, but
Yeah, mine's the grand total.
so Nancy, just so I understand what you're trying to say, they booked 6,000, that was a grant towards the regular transport. Oh, you're saying they're
Yeah, they're saying very specifically the grant funding to assist with overage.
Mhm.
Well, the overage is only for $4,000, but they're booking $6,000 towards that line item. So
Well-
that means that it's covering not only the overage, but also the budgeted amount as well.
well, you may be right, I don't know, but they did say we have. I take that to be past tense, right? So I guess it's possible they booked the 6 and they still have 4. Right? They're still over, I should say.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
possible.
again, that's
Oh, yeah, he did say we have booked.
right.
Right.
So it's really hard to see at what point did they
Right.
actually
Right.
make this,
Yeah.
because again, we don't really have all of their special funds and all of the accounting in, you know, some sort of timeline way, so, so I'm assuming that overage of $4,000, then they can cover with a transfer.
They've
So-
got another grant coming in for almost 3, it says, in the same line on page 1.
Right. Oh, a second grant, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, that still wouldn't cover the $4,000, so,
Not entirely, no.
right. So anyway, my point is just to say, whether it be a grant from the state or federal government, or one of these very generous grants from, you know, some of our own citizens, it becomes a little unclear to me how they are commingling the taxpayer dollars that are assigned very specifically to support their budget versus the grant money that I think is supposed to be used, you know, for non-budgeted items. So
I guess that's it depends, right?
that's
I mean,
never
I don't know what the
been-
grant says. I know nothing about the grant. I only know
Mhm.
what I'm reading here, just like I guess the rest of the board, right?
right.
So I guess depends on what the terms of the grant are, right?
Right. And they've listed the reserve accounts, but again, I would still really like to be able to see the reports, not just for a single month, but, you know, we're now in the 8th month of the year, and we still have not seen these special fund reports. So, Ingrid, do you have any idea when we should be seeing the actual special fund reports?
I
from-
will ask him.
Okay, that would be very helpful. And then related to that, since they have these bullet points here, I just have a very kind of almost a naive question, which is if they have a special fund with $520,000 in it for workers' compensation, why would they need that if they also have a workers' compensation insurance line item?
Well, those are all reserves.
I'm sorry?
Those are all reserves,
Yes, I understand.
right?
So the question is, if you have insurance that covers workers' compensation claims, why would you also need a reserve very specifically for only that usage?
Unfortunately, I don't know a ton about workman's comp, but I'm assuming it's because if there's some liability that we may carry, but I'm sort of taking an educated guess, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Again,
We're
just-
self-insured on workman's compensation. The way the breakout works is we're self-insured on workman's compensation. The way it breaks out is if someone's on workman's comp, there's a 2/3, 1/3 split that the town shares with the insurance company. So in the end, if there's a workman's comp case, the town insurance company rules on the case. The town has liability for its self-insured portion of workman's compensation.
As far as the 1/3?
Yes.
That seems to explain it.
and does that apply to Board of Ed as well, Mike?
I believe so, yeah,
Okay.
I think that's what you're seeing there.
Yeah, because
That's why.
if you go to their budget, again, under their whole list of insurances, they have line item 201I, workers' compensation budgeted at $210,000 per year. And they're, you know, clearly paying it monthly payments and a $52,000 encumbrance. So I guess I'm just a little confused as to why they would also need this additional reserve fund just for that purpose, as opposed to some catch-all
Well,
that they could utilize.
view it as the same concept as health insurance. You want a reserve fund for health insurance, much like you do for workman's comp, in the event that there's a rash of workman's comp injuries, or in the case of health insurance, a rash of high claims. It's a similar concept.
All right. Other thoughts, comments, questions on the Board of Ed side?
Again, all of these funds that are listed here are all special funds, and by definition, they are all extra budgetary. So I will repeat my request again to, I would like to know the balance of this cafeteria fund account, which isn't just another special fund in my opinion, but the feedback that we received from from Christian was that this is not part of the budgetary process, so they did not need to disclose that. And I think if they're going to be making purchases such as the ones that they're describing here, the coolers for the various schools, I think that we need to have some sense for bigger than a bread box size of that particular account.
I will ask him. I actually thought that this was in one of the prior month's reports, but we'll find out what the story there is.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else?
Just pretty much the same question as last month on the health insurance line. I'm not sure if there's been any clarification yet, but with 58% of the year has transpired up until the beginning of March.
I'm sorry, Mike, you're on the town or the board, of ed?
I'm Board of Ed.
Board, sorry, okay.
Okay.
74% of the hospital insurance line has been spent, even though we're at 58% of the year. 23% is in the encumbrance line, meaning for the remaining 42% of the year, we're only going to spend 23% on health insurance of that line. And 4% is left in the available budget. Does that mean that at the end of the year, they expect to be under budget by 4%? Could you just get the answer to what the logic is on that whole line?
Okay.
So, I know you're asking about the particulars, but are you just trying to find out, Mike, if they think they're gonna hit their budget for the year?
That and how do they expend, and why have they spent 74% of their budget and only expect to spend 23% the remaining part of the year? I know that some of these items are front-loaded and expenditures will occur in the first part of the year, but to this extent, for self-insurance where we pay claims, to me, it doesn't make sense. But just, if they could come up with some explanation.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And I guess Nancy's, I think, pointed out, but it seems like they must have caught up with their journal entries simply because of the fact that they're at approximately the right percentage they should be at for this point in the year. Any idea? Did you talk to Christian?
They
about
have been cutting up.
Yeah.
All of their accounts.
that? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mike. Anyone else with the Board of Ed questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
Make a motion.
Yeah, second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. All right. We now come to the part of our meeting where we're going to discuss the finalizing the expenditure side of the 2024-25 budget. We will take a vote at the end, towards the end of the meeting on that item. I'll just say a couple things first, if you don't mind, and then we'll decide how to proceed. All right, so the members have in their packet some declinations, which I'll go over in a moment. And Nancy, I got your email today. Truthfully, if Rich Monaco hadn't clued me into it, I would not have probably gotten it. And I gave copies to the other members because I don't know if they were on that email stream, but we do have that as well. And Mike, do you have a copy, by the way?
Of the,
Nancy had some declinations herself.
yes, I do.
Okay,
Thank
all right. All right, so I'm just gonna go over a couple numbers just to refresh people's memories and so people at home, if they're watching, know where we started, or know where we are now, and so on. So just on the town side, the original budget for the year was $65,962,000. I am rounding a little bit. It was a 12.12% increase. It was a $7,130,000, sorry. The contingency was the same at 300. The capital was 3,228,000. That's a 3.5-fold increase over the prior year, and $2.5 million. So if you add those three things together, they're 12.73% increase and a $9.6 million increase. If you go over to the Board of Ed side, they had a budget of $66,189,000 with 7.37%. That's a $4,545,000 increase. And in total, the original budget was on $135,679,000, sorry, 10.05%, and an increase of $14,179,000.
Tim, you forgot about the capital.
No, that was one I said was they went up to 3.2 million.
Oh, sorry,
and,
I
3.5
missed you saying that.
That's right.
My apologies.
So, there are some decrements that were in the package. So, on the operating expense side, they're not totaled, but I totaled them. The operating expense decrements total $2,133,000. The capital decrements total $1,920,000 for a town side decrement of $4,053,000. Over on the Board of Ed, which is total, that's at the bottom, there's decrements equal to $1,216,000. I will point out here, and I think Nancy picked up on it too, based on the email she sent today, the Board of Ed budget, this came up in the workshop, was put together a little bit differently this year than last year, specifically with the excess costs grant money for special ed. Historically, they netted that against the expense amount, and I asked that question in the workshop. They did not do that this year. They presented those numbers gross. I did reconfirm that with Ron Bathrick, the chairman of the Board of Ed, that they did do that. The $1,216,000 of decrements that they do have here, I think really to compare it properly to the prior year, you'd have to probably reduce the decrements by roughly $800,000 because that's about what the excess cost grant is. Sorry, did you have a question, Nancy? Okay, sorry. So let me just wrap up and tell you what we have post decrement. I'm just going to give the town total for town, contingency, and capital. So with these decrements, the town budget's $65,437,000. It's a 6.15% increase, and it's an increase, of $3,793,000. On the Board of Ed side, it's a $64,973,000 budget. It's an increase of 5.40%. It's $3,329,000. And the sum total for the two areas is $130,410,000, 5.78% increase, and $7,122,000. A couple other comments. Just to give everyone in the room and at home again some idea. On the town side, I'm just going to give you a couple of the drivers, and I'll give you a couple of the drivers on the BOE side. But medical insurance is up $1,690,000. Pension, Social Security, $713,000. Personnel policy, $545,000. Police vehicle maintenance, $155,000. And streets and roads, overtime and wage differential, $119,000. Now, just a point on the police vehicle maintenance. I think the members are aware that the finance department wants to present the budget differently this year than it has been in the past. So some police vehicle maintenance dollars were coming out of the special funds in prior years. So in order to get everything sort of on budget, they moved all the vehicle expenses into that line. When I can dig out my reports here, they did gross up the revenue side of the budget to offset that. A couple of the drivers over on the Board of Ed side, again, like the town, medical insurance is up $864,000. Special ed, $525,000. Unfunded mandates, $300,000. Repairs, $217,000. Electric, $115,000. Two other final points here. Originally, there was a request for 11 FTEs, full-time equivalents, on the town side. There's a request for 2 FTEs on the Board of Ed side. Post decrements, if you will. There remains, at least in front of us at this moment, 2 police starting January 1, so that's 1 FTE. We have 2 part-timers going to full-time, 1 in finance, 1 in engineering, so that's another FTE. And we have a senior center manager, full-time, but our part-timer is still there, so that's a half FTE, but she will be phasing out over time. So there's between 2 to 2.5 FTEs on the town side. The 2 FTEs on the Board of Ed side remain in their budget to the best of my knowledge. And lastly, I got a text from Mr. Monaco today. They did settle the police contract, and so he does want to switch the dollars, which are in, is it contract obligations?
Yes.
Yes.
In contract obligations over to the police line. There won't be a change in the dollars. It's just a category. It's what they typically do anyways. The unsettled contracts sit there. When they get settled, they get moved over to the right department.
That's been done in the new booklet we received?
No. He
No.
texted me on that today, Mike.
Okay.
Okay? So, excuse me, Mike. We can talk about the decrements. Nancy has some decrements. I did start to look at yours, Nancy. There's a lot of overlap between the 2 areas. I guess I can.
Can we just back up just a little bit
Yep,
before
sure.
we get into
Yep.
the details? So, again, there were a lot of numbers presented there, but just to simplify, first I'd like to just clarify one point that you made. The Board of Education has formally requested 2 new positions, but as we discovered during their workshop, they have an administrator position that is currently filled, but from an accounting standpoint, it doesn't exist. It is not listed in their budget because it was created mid-fiscal year, and so therefore it is not in the current budget. And as I pointed out to Mr. Stirk, by definition,
I'm sorry.
it has to be proposed as a new position for the new fiscal year. And that position is the second assistant principal at the North Haven Middle School.
I'm sure you're right, Nancy. I actually, unfortunately, don't recall that. Usually I do, but unfortunately I don't.
So the simple solution is if you go to the administrator page in the Board of Ed budget, which I have here if anyone wants to look at it, for that particular position, there is a dash this year and there's a dash last year. So by definition, that means if there's a number next year, it's a new position. Now, he claims that individual has been in the position since last August, and I absolutely believe it. I was there for the August Board of Education meeting, and I cheered for the individual. I had assumed that they had followed, all the proper procedures, but in fact, this was filled without the benefit of a referendum vote. So that's why it's reflected as just a dash in the budget. So,
Not to mention that, my notes here say that this individual is in place now.
yes.
That was a budget error last year.
No, it's not an error. It didn't exist last year, and it doesn't exist in the current fiscal year because it was never part of the referendum a year ago. He actually created the position before the ink was even dry on the budget book and filled the position last summer, and the Board of Ed voted in August, again, mid-fiscal year. So that's why there's a dash, and he has inflated that particular line item in their budget for administrators. If you go and you look for that line item for a second assistant principal, you won't see it because it doesn't exist. And so he has had to create an accounting workaround in order to pay that individual. So it's not a typo. It's not because he was surprised. It's not because he's understaffed. It's not because Christian is new. It is because he very intentionally created this position mid-fiscal year. So as a result, there are 3 new positions that are being requested by the Board of Ed. Of course, we on the Board of Finance have no control over their employment table. We simply have control over the total amount of money that we approve for them. But I just wanted everyone to actually, hear that and make sure that everyone understood that it's 3 positions, not 2. Going back again to the big picture, I'm just going to address this from the total budget standpoint. In the current fiscal year, the current budget for the town, Board of Ed, and capital is $121,500,000. The first fully loaded budget was $135.6 million. My colleagues, on the Board of Finance, the Republican members of the Board of Finance put together a declination list that got that $135.6 million down to $130.4. So great job. Unfortunately, it's, in my opinion, not enough because that particular amount of expenditures will result in a mill rate of 35.30 or an increase of 2.65 mils. So in my opinion, that would not be acceptable to the people of North Haven, just as it stands by itself, let alone just before a reval year. So I think we've got to do some work here to be able to get that mill rate down, as the Board of Selectmen had given us a guidepost of possibly trying to increase it by no more than 1. I think that's going to be very, very difficult. And so I initially, when I sat down to do this exercise, I was shooting for an increase of 1.5 mils. And even that was very difficult. I had to settle for 1.64 mils. And you can do that one of 2 ways. You can either death by 1,000 cuts and just keep cutting expenditures, or a combination of cuts on the expenditure side and boosting, where appropriate, some of the revenue projections. So I did a combination of the 2. And in the end, and I'll just summarize it, the expenditure decreases that I came up with on the town side were about $1.9 million for the town, an additional $300,000 cut to the Board of Ed. I could only cut $90,000 from capital because really there was very, very little left after $1.9 million had already been reduced on the capital budget. So that's a total of about $2.3 million. And then on the revenue side, I was able to find an additional $1 million in revenue by looking at, I guess it's five different specific sources of revenue. So, and we can certainly go through those, but I just wanted to set the stage so that people in the audience that don't necessarily have in front of them what I'm looking at can understand what we're talking about. So if you want to, we can certainly start, Mr. Chairman, with the expenditure decreases.
Well, let's start big picture, because I did not get a chance to look at this because I didn't know I had it, truthfully.
Yeah, I think I sent it around 10 o'clock this morning.
I know, but
Yep.
I had asked you to send it when the package went off the last week, so
Yep.
members had a chance to look at it.
Yep.
So I guess big picture, looking at your net impact here, which is a sum of 2.3 million in cuts and $1 million in revenue, so you got your 3.3, right?
Yep, exactly.
The decrements that are in the package are 5.2. So since your decrements are 2 million less than what's in the package, how did you come up with a mill rate that's better?
None of my reductions are the ones that are in your decrement list. None of them.
Well, there's a lot of overlap, but I guess my question is, these are decrements that you're suggesting.
Yes, so I took
So
the budget book that we
guess-
have and I reduced it.
Just
from
one
there.
more second, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
So I guess, again, I only got this a couple hours ago. I guess when I looked at this, I saw that it says independent of the decrements that were in the package. Are you saying these are 3.3 million cuts above and beyond the 5.2 that was in the package? That's what I'm trying to
Yes.
figure out.
Absolutely. So what the list of decrements are reflected in the 3/20/24 budget book. So I took those numbers in that version of the budget book as my starting place. And then I've gone through, and the first column tells you what page to go to, specifically what line item, and then the blue column tells you reduce it from this to this, and then it shows the budget savings and the rationale. And the rationale is the actual expenditures from the two previous completed years, meaning 22-23 and 21-22. Of course, we haven't completed the current fiscal year. So in those cases where I looked at the actual figures and they were substantially less than the budgeted amount, and I also looked at the current fiscal year and I multiplied whatever the current expenditure was by 12/8 because we're 8 months into the current fiscal year, that gave me a better idea as to what we're currently spending. So that's how I came up with these numbers.
So Nancy,
Yes.
one of the flaws in that analysis
Mhm.
specifically applies to health insurance.
Okay.
So you've cited two previous fiscal years, but so you've cut $1 million out of the insurance.
Yes.
But what the flawed aspect of that analysis reflects or misses is that we're rated from this current fiscal year every month. So you are taking $1 million away from health insurance
Mhm.
when the analysis by those who are actuaries who work with us on this
Yes.
say that it's going to be $1 million more. That's why the $1 million was in there.
Okay.
So the insurance is flawed on that analysis.
Again, all of these are simply suggestions. And as Mr. Hallahan pointed out, we really have not been privy to any claims information directly from the medical insurance experts.
That's a different issue. You're using flawed analysis. The previous two fiscal years have nothing to do with the renewal rate for health insurance this coming year.
Mhm.
So right off the bat, now some of these suggestions you had, I thought you made some good suggestions.
Mhm.
But the $1 million, I want everyone to know it's a flawed analysis. It's not the way it works. So there's $1 million in these decrements. And oh, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, for those that don't know what decrements are, what Tim was describing was the fact that the budget came in at a high number. Decrements are the deletions of those requests that came in to get us down to where we are right now. So the other thing on the revenue is I noticed that you put in for $1 million of fund balance.
Yes. Well, actually, an additional 750,000.
Okay, so we put in the 250 on fund balance.
Yes.
Because we have the rating agency's dilemma, who thinks we've relied on fund balance too much. Now, do I think there's something more than the 250 we could do? Possibly.
Mhm.
But we've got to make sure that when we look at proposals on these cutbacks,
Mhm.
that the right analysis is being used, not the flawed analysis. And the reason I mentioned the insurance, because on this, the $1 million is the largest one on this document that Mrs. Barrett shared with us. So
Right. But as you can see from my notes on that particular revenue increase, I did acknowledge exactly what you're saying. It certainly exceeds the goal of $0 in transfer that you would love to have for your AAA bond rating, but it is still less than the current budgeted transfer for the current fiscal year, which is $1.4 million.
yeah, I'm not debating that. I'm debating the insurance analysis.
Right, well, you were just mentioning the revenue increase, so you jumped over to the increase in the transfer from the general fund from 250 to $1 million, and I'm certainly acknowledging in my notes exactly what you're saying. And unfortunately, folks, we are at a point where we have to either decide that we want fewer people and all the costs associated with employing people, or we have to make some cuts or increases in revenue that will, have other consequences. And unfortunately, that is one of the consequences of using federal funds to employ people where their salaries and benefits continue to go up, is that we're now faced with either a substantial mill rate increase, or we have to be making cuts to the expenditure side and increases on the revenue side.
Yeah, just so everyone's clear, we did not use federal funds on the town side to hire new people. Many governments, many municipalities, and many of my colleagues did. The town government side did not use federal funds to fund positions where the money would run out and then we'd have to budget them. So let's get that off the table.
All right, thank you, Mike.
But if people were hired last year and we used federal funds to balance our budget, it may not have been a direct correlation, but it certainly the effect is the same. You still have to make up the dollars
Except,
for whatever decisions we made to expend those dollars in last year's budget.
I guess what I would say, Mike, is, I see your point, and it's sort of a discussion about using, one-time or irregular dollars, if you will, right? To plug the budget, which, you could argue that that's what the unappropriated fund balance is, right?
Well, yeah,
We don't,
we
we
didn't
don't-
have to have that full discussion.
no, I'm just saying, we don't have the positions at least, right? I know what you're saying, right? Whereas, to Nancy's point, the Board of Ed converted a couple of grant-funded positions into full-time positions over the last year. It's 5 in total, I believe. And they're stuck, so to speak, with that payroll, right?
That's
Exactly.
different, yeah, that's a different case.
To
exactly,
continue the
right.
same payroll,
Yes.
you still need to find the money somewhere.
Yes, right, exactly.
Right, and that's what our issue is this year.
And one other point I'd like to make on this, regarding the analysis of the contractual obligations. On the surface, I understand the analysis, Mrs. Barrett or Nancy. So, but the reality of the situation is that Rich Monaco and I have spent 3 months on the police department contract. And as Tim mentioned, we just settled this contract. So that contract settlement, that's why we had already anticipated that number for contractual obligations to pay for this police department, the contract that we just settled. So we settled this contract in 3 months. Prior to that, it was 3 years. And we saved a lot of attorney's fees as a result of it.
All right, well, due to that settlement and the decision to, I guess, move the money over into the police labor line from the contractual obligation line, could we get, in the next few days, could we get some corrected pages sent to us?
Well, we can, Mike, but we would finish tonight's meeting, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Like, again,
No.
all I can do is use
Let's
the
just-
information.
Let's
we
let
have.
Mike finish, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just asking for the update on those numbers based on that change.
Yeah, we can
When
do,
when available.
yeah, but, absolutely, but of course, if there's other changes
Why
that
not?
occur,
Yeah. Right.
okay.
Oh, yeah. No, we're working what we have in front of us tonight.
Sorry, Nancy, you were gonna say something.
Yeah, I'm just saying that based upon the figures that I had and all of us have in our reports for this month, our contractual obligations expenditure line item is 0 this year. So that's why I factored that into this decision. Again, not knowing about the police contract, I had assumed that all of the contracts had been taken care of, and that since there was nothing spent this year, there would be nothing spent next year.
I think we talked about police, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter. I actually talked to Richie about this line and.
We have asked, actually, you guys have asked questions this
Yeah.
year about that line, and
Right.
I did explain that
Right.
that was due to the contracts, and they
Right.
have been paid as soon as they allocate those funds to those payments, that line will be expensed.
And it
So
includes,
that's why it's 0 right now.
right. It includes obviously the normal, increase in their pay. there's payroll tax, their 401k, and all this is retroactive, of course, to their last expiration of last contract,
Right.
step increases, et cetera. So,
But they have $250,000 budgeted in the current fiscal year budget.
That
So
was for the
that
fire
police
department.
contract,
That was for the fire, the one for this year is for the fire department.
the $250,000 will only go to the fire department?
That was for the, yes, I believe
The
so. That was the
contractual
only
obligation.
contract, that was the only contract, yes. That was-
So when we made this budget last year, we were not anticipating settling both fire and police in 1 year.
The police doesn't expire this year. It expires on 6/30/2024.
Right, so
So
then,
that one is for next year. This, the police contract is going to take effect in fiscal year 2025.
even though we're settling it early.
well, the
Yes, I
expense
mean,
is still next
We
year.
should always do
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
but there won't
exactly,
be
that's
any
ideal.
retroactive
That is the
pay
ideal.
because it's not expired. There will not be retroactive pay.
No, it will not.
So isn't that the whole point of contractual obligations is to cover
Right, but this
retroactive pay?
budget right now doesn't include those increases.
So here, let
Because
me
it
try it
wasn't
this
set.
way.
So
so
next
the
year
co-
there won't be,
Hold
right?
on.
Yes.
Hold on. What we've always done is we put dollars in the budget in anticipation of contracts that are not settled.
Yes,
So even though the contract is coming up in June, which is the next fiscal year, the finance department budgeted not knowing whether or not the contract was going to be
Right.
settled, right?
Wait, to clarify what you're saying, it's in anticipation of, or anticipating, it's to bookmark expenses for contracts in negotiation that have already expired.
This is next year's budget though, Mike. So
No.
what,
But
it
what
is
I-
next year's budget.
Right,
So what they did was they put aside money in this line, which they typically do because they didn't know if the contract was going to settle.
Right.
right,
Right. So-
okay.
So-
But again, it's for contracts that expire early. Or, I'm sorry, that have previously expired, for which we have to cover.
Because historically, we've been
anticipated.
behind
If
in
something
renewing.
if something hasn't expired yet, then the dollars that are on the labor line are the actual dollars.
Except
Yes.
in this case, okay, this contract expires
Expires in
30
June.
days after the fiscal
Right.
year starts. And so they couldn't anticipate that it would have been settled by then, so they did what we typically do, which is put it in this line.
Right.
So, want me to try to explain it?
Okay.
So, we have, let's, 575. So, what'll happen now, because this contract starts July 1st, the 575 or 585 was reflective of a contract we knew we were gonna settle. So we just move it from the contractual obligations into the payroll side, starting July 1st. So, and, you know, Nancy just mentioned that, and she couldn't have known it was gonna be settled. So she's suggesting a cut off of what we already factored in the police settlement would have been, but she didn't know that. So that's why this money's there. We can't cut it back, because it's gonna have to get rolled in over the payroll starting July 1st.
Of course.
So that's the explanation. I do agree, before we continue, that at the next town meeting, when I have to present this budget, I have to stand up there and present it to the residents. So yes, the example that was given, we gotta find a way to either cut expenses or raise revenue. That is a fact. It's just a matter of how do we do it now that I'm sharing more facts that people didn't realize.
Can I just ask a question? You're suggesting the mechanism that has been used in the past when a contract has expired and you transfer that money from contractual obligations into payroll in order to cover retroactive pay. If they are just simply going to begin the next fiscal year at the higher rate of pay, why don't you just adjust that line item
Well, we
in
just
the,
said
in
that.
the
I said that.
department?
That's what we're
No,
doing.
no. You're suggesting shifting money from contractual obligations into payroll. Why not just start off with payroll being the appropriate
Well,
number?
Well,
That's what our
It's
intention
the
will
same
be.
thing, though.
It's the same thing.
It is the same
Yeah.
thing.
Okay, but But then
So-
it's not covering retroactive pay, it's just literally.
Well,
Okay,
it-
I misspoke. Historically, this is probably the first time in years we've had a contract that actually settled before it
Yeah.
I
expired.
agree,
So
I agree,
I may
that's
have
why we
misspoke
can't
there on
use
that part, okay?
previous experience,
All right,
right?
but look, the dollars aren't changing here,
dollars.
and we gotta move on here. So whether they're here or over in the police department, the numbers are gonna be the same. We already have a decrement, by the way, for $200,000 because it's not all needed to cover this one police contract.
I think it's one more important point. We still have to call a Board of Selectmen meeting, because we just got this information today. So we have to go to the executive session to ratify the contract. And then in the end, this budget book, which may show the 585 and contractual obligations, it'll be moved to the payroll line in a revised budget book.
Yeah, the corrected pages that I.
The corrected pages that you asked for, Mike.
Or the
Right.
revised.
The revised
The
page,
mod,
right.
the change, yeah, okay. By the way, can I formally remake the request I made last month to have Tim and I meet with the
Yeah.
insurance agents?
Well, we'll grant the request, okay? Yes, okay.
Thank you, sir.
It may be a Zoom, it may be, but we'll get it done,
well,
okay?
Fair enough.
Out of fairness to your request, we'll
My
do it,
computer.
okay?
All right, so why don't we do this, Nancy?
Yes,
We've certainly talked about the insurance enough. I think we've talked about the personnel policy expense enough. Maybe to make this efficient, why don't we start with the dollars here? We'll do the revenue later, but why don't you take us through some of the other bigger dollars that you've got in here?
so, going back to the insurance, Mr. Frieda, you're saying that based upon the claims information or any information that you've received about general insurance or employee insurance, that we cannot reduce either one of those first two expenditures?
That's
that you're
right.
suggesting.
On the first two expenditures, we get the quotes from the people who are the liaisons, who do the actuarial analysis, who review the claims history. So the top one is CSI, that's the number they gave us. Not CSI, I'm sorry. It's
Blue something, right?
yes, Kerma. So the
Okay.
second one is the health insurance. So these numbers are the numbers, the quotes we get. So there is no play in these numbers.
Okay.
You want to go on to police?
Sure. Again, I had to really study the employment table in order to deduce exactly what was happening there. So the police had requested, just like the fire department, had requested 4 new additional positions. And based upon what I could surmise from our employment table, my Republican colleagues decided that they would keep 2 of the 4, but that they would begin in January. And my feeling is that short of Mr. Frieda actually saying it, it seems like we are following a no new positions kind of rule of thumb here. And I think that the police department, and in particular, based upon the feedback that the police chief gave us, he's actually facing having to fill 9 positions in the next fiscal year between retirements and people that are on temporary disability, and there's someone that is on desk duty, et cetera. So again, my feeling is that it doesn't make sense to be giving him the green light to add 2 more positions for a total of 11 positions that he would have to fill, just to simply cover somebody that might be out on temporary disability. So my recommendation would be to eliminate those 2 half-year positions, because I think that's what's getting us into trouble here is adding more town employees, and just wait for the police department to achieve a fully staffed steady state, and then use data to reevaluate the need for additional patrolmen. I did not hear any data presented by the chief specific to our town that actually provided some impetus for hiring additional police officers. That is in no way saying that our police officers are not working very hard. I know they are. I know many of them, and I have nothing but respect for both our police and firefighters. However, as we can see, we have our work cut out for us, and we have to be able to find over $3 million here. And I don't think that adding police officers at a time when he's actually going to have a difficult time filling the positions that are going to be vacated, I don't think that makes sense. So that would free up $86,000.
Nancy, I guess it may not be what the data you wanted, but I guess I would just remind the board that the question was asked, and I think the chief's response was that he took a sample of 27 towns with populations on either side of North Haven's, and of those 27 towns, based on the FBI statistics that he had, we had the second highest crime rate amongst the 27 towns.
Again, I didn't speak to the chief about this during the workshop because I thought that it wasn't appropriate. But to simply add up a list of crimes in a given period of time and compare the number from town A with the number from town B without any indication of the severity of the crime, that is just statistically garbage. And I don't think that in any way addresses the real concerns of the people of North Haven. And when I asked him several years ago, if we give you more police officers, will our crime rate go down? He was confident that it would. We did that experiment, and it is not the case.
I'm going to interrupt you here, Nancy.
Please, go ahead.
Because I think you're totally off the mark here.
Okay, go ahead.
Because he was very clear with explaining what it was that he needed in the police department. It takes a lot of time in order to get somebody on board.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to say that was garbage, that he talked about that his statistics, I take offense to that. And I think that we need to respect our police and respect our fire and do the best we can to try to solve these situations.
I completely agree. I'm not in any way saying that the police chief is garbage. I'm
You
saying
just
that
did.
that argument is garbage. And using scare tactics in order to get additional staffing is not the way to go. And again, if he wants to present information to us that is specific to the North Haven Police Department, that argues for this is why we need more people, then I will absolutely sit down with him, and I would love to be able to go through that data.
Well, I don't recall him doing scare tactics either. We couldn't get into how he is, what's going on, the details. That's one thing, he couldn't get into the specifics. All you have to do is turn on the news and see what's going on. So I did not take what he said as a scare tactic. It's the way the world is. Just turn on the news. So I don't like that comment about scare tactics, because he basically gave a presentation. He answered our questions. We're talking about adding them half year. They got to go to school. So I don't think that's unreasonable.
They have to go to the academy. I agree.
Yes, they do.
I agree.
So it's half a year.
If
That's
it were easy, we would be able to hire police officers from other departments. We cannot. We have to hire people that are coming in as rookies, and they have to go through this very lengthy process of going to the academy and then onboarding and so forth. It is a very lengthy process, and they have 9 positions, by his own words, that they're going to need to fill in the next fiscal year.
Well, if you have retirements, that's just anywhere. If you have a
I agree.
retirement, you have to replace it.
I agree.
So
But
it is
if
what
it's
it is.
difficult to do, then start with those 9, achieve a steady state, collect your data, and then you can present an argument that is based upon a fully staffed department.
But that's his policing the department as to when these people are gonna retire. They might have made a comment, maybe they didn't commit. In the meantime, are we supposed to wait? I mean, we're starting to get into the weeds of him running his department. So I disagree that it's not our job to police how he's going to run the department. How much does he know about who's retiring and when? That's his job.
Again, he went through the list of exactly who's
I
out
know.
with this and
He
who's
did-
out with that, and
He did, but
there were
he
only
can't-
2 retirements,
He
actually.
can't commit to a timeline. I don't think it's unreasonable for half a year, like Tim was reading and suggesting that
I think,
That's unreasonable.
Right, but
I-
it's never half a year. It's a half a year next year, and then it's a full year the year after
of course it is. I think we can disagree on whether or not there's a need. I will say that, you know, we can't penalize any department head, let alone the police chief, if they've got retirees and it's a little bit higher than normal, and they're gonna have to fill those positions. That's just a challenge of any management job, right? So to me, it's not a question of whether or not he's got retirees that may retire, and that he may or may not be able to fill the positions. I think, to me, that's somewhat irrespective of the request. All right, I think we flushed that one out enough for now. Let's move on to our next one, please.
Again, this is contingent upon the previous point, that if we are reducing the number of requested positions in our budget, that should not only be reflected in the salary line, it should also be reflected in the pension and social security line that the town has to pay into for all full-time employees.
Well, we did rebudget that, I believe, right? Yeah, we did. We have a
No,
cut of
this is-
$152,000. Yeah.
No, but that request is if you also cancel the previous line. That's what she means by that.
As
Oh, I'm
well as
sorry.
others. So,
Right.
so all other positions that have been canceled, as a part of the declinations, all of those reductions are reflected in this $152,000 decrease. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So again, that would be an additional cost for these two, half-year.
Well, is that 40,000 can't be the pension social security for one FTE? What is that 40, Missy?
I would have to go back and figure out exactly how I had to calculate that.
All right.
It's for that particular line item.
All right, why don't we go down to sanitation, 80,000? And I guess, by the way, when I saw this one,
Yes.
my recollection, which I'm sure I have notes on, is that
Mhm.
tipping fees are, if anything, going up, not down. But go ahead.
Well, again, based upon all I can do is use the data that's available to me. We previously spent a little under $1 million in 22-23, a little over $1 million in 21-22, and thus far this year, we've spent $631,000 year to date on tipping fees. So based upon that, those three pieces of information, I thought it was appropriate to reduce the tipping fees estimate from 1.136 million down to 1,056,000 for a savings of $80,000.
Yeah,
Well,
I
here's-
think tipping fees, you cannot use historical tipping fees because I think they're only gonna go up for the next year or so, or next few years. So I think what we budgeted is reasonable. I think we could cut it, but we're gonna end up paying it anyway.
Here's my notes, and I'm sure Mike knows this by heart, but my notes said we were paying $113 a ton right now, and we do roughly 14,400 tons a year, and that the state was projecting $150 a ton in the next 2 years.
So, as the 10-year chairman of the Municipal Waste Board regionally, I can tell you tip fees are going up, just what Tim said, because I mentioned that a couple of meetings ago. However, if we wanted to pare this back, I think we're playing with numbers, but we've got to start somewhere, so I think that there could be some room here, depending upon what we all decide. But it's gonna be made up either this coming fiscal year, we're gonna have to pay it anyway, or it's gonna happen the following fiscal year. So there may be some give there. It's not unreasonable, but we're just playing with numbers, really.
Mike, the tonnage that we're paying, is that contract or is that a spot rate?
Contract.
Any idea when the contract runs out?
Well, I'd have to check on that.
Yeah.
But spot rate is only given to municipalities, to industrial waste that tries to go into a municipal facility and tries to negotiate the best term. If the repository the transfer station or the burn station, if they need bulk that particular month, they'll be more likely to negotiate a lower rate.
Right.
So we're not municipalities involved with spot rate.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of, I mean, since we're contracted at 113, was just trying to get an idea if that contract was gonna be up next year at some point or not, that's all. So I guess the sum, what I heard is there might be a little room in there, is what I thought I heard.
I would say there could be some.
Okay. All right,
Because there really isn't too much of a difference between the last 2 years. It's about a, $9,000 difference. So that's why I thought this seems to be a pretty big swing to get from, $1,000,007 up to $1,136,000.
Nancy, why is pension social security on here twice?
I think it was 2 different issues. So pension social security the second time.
Different line item.
It's probably the deferred comp, is it deferred comp?
No, this is the actuary
Actuary.
expense.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's the actual
Yeah,
expense,
yeah,
sorry.
Sorry.
Which is currently over, it's 123% this year. And last year actual,
Mhm.
it was about $140,000, and there's a lot of retirements happening.
So
I-
that's what I wasn't quite sure is
Yeah.
what looking forward, because it seemed like last year seemed to be a bit of an outlier at 140,000.
Yeah, we're facing a lot of retirements this year, last year, and we're pretty sure next year as well.
Because
So
so far this year, we've only spent $60,000.
Well, but this is the 4 plans. We do 2 every other year, right? That's what this is, right? This
This
is
is
the act-
also retirement calculations, and we are working in revising all those documents, so,
Okay, so that's why the retirements come into play.
right.
Okay,
And we haven't had this before, right?
what?
Well, we are
We always do
facing
the
a lot of
plans.
retirement.
No, the actuarial expense.
Sure, it's in the
We
budget.
have?
Yeah, we spent 140,000 in
No,
20.
I mean like several years back, I thought I remember seeing those dashes
I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
I think
in terms of confirmation of the retirements and things like that, those functions. Okay. So the expectation for next year is that it will be,
I would say that it would be, the amount that we have is, it's a good amount. The $150,000.
the 150?
Yes.
Okay.
50.
All right, you got central supplies, Nancy, at 40?
Yeah, again, this is another one of these, telephone services is another line item that we typically have a flat amount, and year after year, it seems to be coming in underneath, significantly underneath that number, which is budgeted at $330,000. Previously, we spent $266 and then $273, and so far this year we've spent $137. So that's why I thought let's reduce it by just $40,000, getting it down to $290. Anyone have any objection to that?
I'm just looking, I don't have any notes on this one. I don't know if that's townwide phone service or what that is. I guess it probably must be, right?
Let me explain,
Yes.
the reason that
Central
number,
supply.
the reason that number's in there the way it was,
Mhm.
we did a 5-year look back. And it was a 320,000, 340,000 5-year look back average. So, that's the reason why that number was there. Now, that's not to say we can't cut it back, but we did the 5-year look back on that.
Or is there something unique about that period of time that is different now, that in the last 2 years and in the current fiscal year, we're not seeing those kind of numbers?
No, I think what happens is, there's always this ebb and flow of these type things. So that's why we did the 5-year look back versus a 1-year or 2-year look back. But
Where are we year to date? I think you just said it, Nancy, but I'm asking, I guess, again.
Where are we?
Did you just say where we were year to date on this item?
Oh, yes, it does. 137,493.
Oh, I see it, right. That's through February?
Yes, through the end of February. Yep. Again, it's not clear to me whether telephone services also involves some sort of upgrades to any type of telephone lines or telephone hardware, in which case then perhaps there was a period of time in which there had to be some upgrades. I don't really know what goes into this particular expenditure line item, but certainly in the last 2 years plus the current fiscal year, it seems like it's lower.
Any thoughts on that one, Ingrid?
Like Mr. Frida said, we had looked at a previous 5 years, and the average was 325,000. So I think 290 is low.
You know, we've got to look at
Yeah,
this
we
stuff.
can look
We've
at
got,
it,
we've got to, I agree, we have to start looking and start whittling away here, so
Right.
that's got to be a line we're gonna have to maybe cut back a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned, if I can jump in again, Tim,
Yep.
that, you know, we started off this process before all the decrements with a 4.4 mil increase. And I said at a department head meeting, I'm not presenting a 4.4 mil increase. So now we're down to 2.64. So just doing this off the top of my head, if we started to pare back some of this, we're probably at 2.57 now. So the reality of this situation is, once again, I've got to present this. And if it doesn't pass, then the reality is going to be that the way it works in government is that if we get down to a number that the public doesn't accept and the referendum gets voted down, budget gets voted down during a referendum, then it goes to personnel. And the first group of personnel in local government that is affected by a referendum that fails are the part-timers. The part-timers in our town are those that staff the pool, help staff the library, help do a lot behind the scenes in some of the different departments. And then it's services, ladies and gentlemen. So
It also includes some former full-timers who have, I guess, retired and come back to work part-time, and they're obviously valuable for their legacy knowledge of how the town runs.
Right.
I think everyone here would agree that if we left all the positions in this budget, there would be no way a 4.4 mil presentation would pass in a referendum. No way.
As I pointed out before, it's not just the mill rate of 2.65, it is also the combination of that immediately prior to a reval. So if we have 2 years in a row, last year it was just a hair under 2 mil increase. And then if we present a 2.65 mil increase this year, and then that's followed by a revaluation in which people's property values go up substantially, then that is the 1-2 punch that I'm trying to avoid.
Well, but in theory, that's irrelevant. I understand there's anomalies in the way that happens, but in theory, taxes shouldn't change. Now, look, if we had waterfront property in town, we all know that waterfront property tends to appreciate much more, and a resident who might have a beachfront property might experience much higher appreciation than someone who's in the center of town. And look, we don't know if sometimes it's a shift over to residential, sometimes it's a higher shift to commercial. I'm not close enough to the market to guess which way it's going to go. So I hear you, and I'm not saying it might not occur, because anomalies happen when they do the revals.
And we also have the ability to reduce the mill rate in reval.
Correct.
So let me ask you this, if it goes before the people at the public hearing and there is pushback and we have to come back to the drawing board, does this board have the discretion to start someplace other than with part-time help?
Not if there's going to be layoffs.
No, I'm not saying layoffs. I'm saying if we simply have to reduce the budget in order to reduce the mill rate, are we forced by something in our charter
No.
that says that we have to start with part-time help?
No, you could cut telephone services out altogether. You won't have phone service, but you could do it.
No, I'm saying we could start wherever we want to start because we make the budget.
And I'm
Right.
saying, that's my understanding.
Thank you.
Well, let me back up on this, okay? In a union contract environment, the part-timers are non-union. They would be the first that would have to be relieved. So this board, if there's a lot of pushback, would come up with another dollar amount. It would not involve determining which full-time union positions would go. This board would have nothing to do with that. That would be myself, that would be the union presidents. That's a whole nother series of discussions.
I think what Nancy's just asking, Mike, is do we have to start with personnel? If we found savings in other areas, could we use those? And the answer to that's yes.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what we're doing right
Yeah,
now.
exactly right. Yeah. All right, let's cover a couple of the other big dollars here, Nancy. Personnel policy, labor negotiations, page 25.
So again, with the assumption that the contract negotiations are behind us, and I'm assuming that these labor negotiation costs are attributed to our attorney's fees, that previously we only spent $21,000 in 22-23 and $46,000 in 21-22, and we've spent just a couple $100 year to date. So I thought a reduction from $75,000 to $25,000 was reasonable.
I did look into this, Nancy. Per state mandate, we are required to upgrade pension documents. And these lawyer fees are going to be for that.
Oh, this is for the
For
pension?
reviewing the documents for pensions
Oh,
and
okay.
negotiating with the unions.
So is that done by Billy Ryan, or is that done by Rich Monaco?
It's
No,
not-
we need lawyers to do that, yeah,
say,
for the pension documents.
yeah. We can offer input, Rich and I, but the lawyers have to draft it.
And do we have a sense for, bigger than the bread box, how much we're going to need of that?
We don't have a sense right now.
Yeah.
In my opinion, no.
Again, I don't know what to do with that, because 75,000 seems quite high to me, but if we have a lot of attorney billable hours, then that could add up very
Yeah,
quickly.
they have, that's probably what it is, billable hours.
Can I ask though, what page was that on?
That's on page
Sure,
25.
25.
25, okay, yep. So that's what you're referring to, okay, I'm sorry.
All right, you have one for 20,000, fire civil defense, page 28.
Again, these are, it's just lists as hydrants. Previously, we spent $9,000 in 22-23, zero in 21-22, and thus far this year, we've spent $9,000. So I thought it was reasonable to reduce it by $10,000 from 25 to 15.
Did he ask right?
Oh, this is hydrants?
Hydrants, yeah.
Didn't he ask
And that's different from the hydrant at the training station.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to ask.
No, he
This
did
is an
ask for hydrants.
annual
Yeah, he did ask.
line item.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a very specific thing where they have to go underground and bring water in across the street and so forth.
Yeah, I don't know, and maybe Ingrid does it. This isn't the water for the hydrants, is it just the
I did a
repair and-
5-year lookup on this
Yeah.
account, and the 5-year average was $20,000.
How much?
So 20,000.
Okay. Is this to replace hydrants that are no longer functioning? Is that what it is, do you think?
I have to look into
Yeah,
it.
okay, it's not water, I don't think, that's a
No,
separate
No,
item.
no, it's a
Yeah.
separate, yes. It is regional water, so I think it's replacement of
Yeah.
water hydrants, yes. Repairs and replacement,
I think they go around and they check them
right.
routinely. So I don't know whether that's the cost of replacing them or what. But. And then the line right directly below that is fire and civil defense emergency management for equipment supplies. Again, this is something that has been budgeted kind of seesawing up and down. It was high and then it was low and then it's been back up high again this year. Previously spent 16,000 in 22-23, 26 in 21-22, and only $1,600 year-to-date this year. So I thought it was reasonable to bring it down from 50 down to 30 for a savings of $20,000.
I'm just trying to find the line in the budget, Nancy.
It's way down at
It's
the
at the
bottom
bottom.
of the fire department.
It's at the bottom.
It's kind of
Oh, that's a different,
separate thing.
different
Yeah.
category, sorry.
Exactly.
All right,
So
my
the chief is
notes,
paid for that additional, excuse me, additional position, and then as part of that, he has like a separate line item for equipment and supplies.
the equipment supplies for cameras at some intersections. That's what it was for. That's why it's up 25 grand.
I thought he also had a line in his budget for equipment and supplies, just part of the fire department budget. Do I have that?
I'm assuming he does, that'd be a typical line item, I'm just saying that.
So that would be separate from this fire, civil defense, emergency management.
I'm just letting you know what I wrote down for my notes. I forget why he needed this or requested, but that's what the increase was for. All right, let's just cover the one for 15, then and then BOE, and then we'll talk about the revenues.
Tim, I think that might have included the extrication equipment, 30,000.
The civil defense?
Yeah, well,
No.
it says.
No, that was capital, wasn't it? That was
Oh, that
capital.
was capital.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's just discuss, I guess it's gas, oil, diesel, streets and roads for 15.
Yeah, again, this is just one of these things that, from department to department, this line is kind of all over the place. Some it's very high and over budget, and some it's budgeted and they're significantly under it. So, previously spent 82,000 in 22-23, 96,000 in 21-22, and they've only spent 56 so far this year. So again, not a big reduction, but just reducing it from 110 to 95 for a savings of 15,000.
Okay.
I'm
so-
fine, I'm fine with that. I'm fine. I think we gotta start looking at some of this and making
Right.
some adjustments, so.
And likewise, just below that in streets and roads, again, sidewalk maintenance and repair, and perhaps Mr. Frieda has a better handle on this in terms of anticipated demand for this, but I recommended reducing this by $10,000 because previously we only spent 11,000 in 22-23. We spent 0 in 21-22, and we've spent 0 so far this year. That doesn't mean it wouldn't be spent in the spring.
Right.
or-
Yeah, but he did, I mean, he did talk about it during his presentation.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
primarily due to trees, he
Yeah,
said.
so I think that,
And wasn't part of this also making the sidewalks handicap
Yeah,
accessible?
yeah, so he was gonna start that. That's probably, I mean, they really doesn't seem like they did a lot prior, but he did
Well-
specifically talk about sidewalks and handicap accessible because of the trees.
And what's difficult to predict is the repairs are always done in the spring. So starting in April, we're gonna start seeing the repairs done. If we wanted to cut this back, we're not quite sure of the extent of the repairs that need to be done right now in April, May, and June. So we certainly can look at this.
Yeah, but what do you, 5,000, I don't know.
Let's see, we kind of skipped all over the place here. Unemployment compensation under personnel policy, that's kind of right in the middle. I recommended reducing that from 20 down to 10. Previously, we spent $121 in 22-23, 0 in 21-22, and we've spent a little under $300 year to date.
I don't have a good feel for that line.
So we are responsible for unemployment wages. And as she said, she's right. We have not had any bad luck per se the past couple of years, but like in 2021, we spent $34,000. So that line can vary from 10 to 40. It just depends.
And actually, you reminded me, I guess, I didn't know, but it came to my attention a couple years ago, that unlike a business,
Right,
we have to
for
pay
it.
directly.
We have to pay.
It doesn't come out of the unemployment compensation fund, right?
Right.
And we pay the unemployment wages.
Right,
Yes.
so we have to
Yes.
pay all
Yep.
their wages. Right.
Yep.
And we have about 250 to 300 employees. So we're responsible for all of them.
But if we wanted to take a little bit out of that also, we may have to.
Okay. Let's see, we did labor negotiations, we did, how about, library electricity? Again, this is another utilities that seem to vary tremendously from department to department in terms of their costs, but, the library spent, $50,000 in 22-23, about 53,000 in 21-22. They've spent about 36,000 so far this year. So I recommended reducing it from 73 to 63 for a savings of 10.
I gotta tell you, on that one, I mean, they're talking about increases in electricity costs again. It's, anecdotal, I read about in the papers and stuff. We're in a state with one of the highest electricity costs in the country, and, while I don't have,
I don't see rates coming down.
yeah. All right, so let's just hit there's only two left. One is engineering, that's a consultant.
Again, if you just forecast that library number for the current fiscal year, so these are real time, real numbers, $36,000 times 12 divided by 8 gets you to 54. Right? So it's not looking way back, it's not looking way forward, it's looking, if we just continue the way we're going. So I just wanted to share that number. I'm sorry, Tim, what did you?
Well, you got two left here, and then we'll do the Board of Ed, right? You got engineering, public works.
Yes. Okay, engineering. Okay, so I'm receiving feedback from lots of people all over town. We have too many consultants. It seems like every single department has a consultant. In engineering, keep in mind, we still have the engineering 2 position that is still vacant, as far as I know, and hopefully they'll be filling that soon, which I hope will also take up some of the workload. But we have, in addition to a consultant, we also have a dam consultant. So I'm sure they have very different jobs, but I just think that the consultant position, given that we might be bringing in someone on a full-time basis that it clearly has a skill set, that if we're able to do that this year, and I'm expecting that we will, that we should be able to eliminate that position and bring it from 10,000 down to 0 and still keep the other consultant.
I spoke to Lynn today about this line. She did mention that this is a different consultant and it's for land surveys.
Yes.
And she does need this, there are different state mandates, so she does need the line.
You say it's land or?
Land survey consultant.
Part of a state mandate, that's why it's in there. But
Okay. And likewise, in Public Works, I am not in any way objecting to the MS4 consultants. I know we have to have those every single year indefinitely. However, it just seems like what we pay those consultants from year to year has really varied pretty wildly. Previously, we spent 74,000 in 22-23 and 117,000 in 21-22, and we've spent about 77,000 this year with a $39,000 encumbrance, which I don't know whether that will be paid or not paid, but it's an encumbrance. So I just recommended just shaving a little off the top and take it down from 130 to 120.
So this line not only covers consultants, but it covers software for stormwater data management. It covers inspections and licenses. And they're all state mandates, so.
And
They're all state
would all of that
mandates,
be covered if we reduced it? That's the question.
I think that's kind of the link.
I don't really have a sense.
Currently, we are at 89% of our budget right now.
Yeah, but that's because of the encumbrance, right? The 77 and 39. So, and our, yeah, I don't have it in front of me, but, and the budgeted amount is how much?
Currently, 130?
Yeah. So I'm assuming that that encumbrance would take us through the end of the year, so.
That
that's-
income, so it's not only the consultants, it's the software, so there's a couple of things that we're paying out of the line.
Yes, I understand, but.
Right, so that PO is only for one vendor, for one consultant, then we have the other two parts.
Yes, I understand that the total amount of money is divided up between the person, the consultant, as well as the software. The question is, would reducing it down to 120 still pay for all of those things?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, let's go on to the Board of Ed.
Okay, so, Board of Ed, okay. So, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, the Republicans reduced the Board of Ed budget, which, as I mentioned, this year is 61.6 million. Their request was for 66.2 million, which is a total of $4.5 million increase, or a 7.4% increase. The Republicans reduced that by 1.2 million, getting that down to a total of 65 million, roughly. And it still would be an increase of $3.3 million, or 5.4%. So my recommendation is to reduce it by just a little bit more, which is $300,000, give or take. It's about 308, in order to get it to a 4.9% total, and total increase rather. And again, this total reduction, meaning what the Republicans recommended combined with what I'm recommending, that's a total of 1.2 plus 300,000 is a total of 1.5 million. Again, is based upon this very large sum that they're starting with, this $66.2 million, or a $4.5 million increase. A 7.4% increase is a large one to start with. So that total reduction of 1.5 million is due to a couple of things. The chairman mentioned the first one, which is the $819,000 ECS reimbursement that they failed to present when they talked about their special ed costs. They showed them as gross costs without any reimbursement included. I also looked at the information that they provided about updated medical insurance projections, and it looks like there's a $185,000 reduction based upon that.
So Nancy, if you don't mind,
Yes.
that did catch my eye. Where'd you get that from?
The 2-page document that they gave us, which is, find it?
It came with their workshop, or was it in another regular meeting?
This. I can pass it down to you if you want.
Oh, that was the email from Christian?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
email from
I've got
Christian. Yeah. So he went through very specifically, again, this is just a follow-up, as we do. We ask questions and some departments follow up. And so they specifically stated that the special education excess cost reimbursement would reduce the total by about $819,000. The medical insurance analysis from Brown and Brown provided an updated projection that reduced their total budget by $185,000 and $185,544. There was also some question about the Medicare tax and that it was miscalculated last year. But again, I just looked at the numbers in terms of the actual monthly expenditures that they were recording, and I was able to project forward that was also increased, and perhaps a little bit too much. And then also looking at what else? Their estimates for Medicare and electricity, and just again, in terms of big picture, they provided within their budget a breakdown of discretionary and non-discretionary total funds. And under discretionary funds, they listed an increase of 15% up to $2.8 million. So if they have $2.8 million in discretionary funds, and we are suggesting a $1.5 million reduction in their requested increase, I thought that seemed reasonable.
So just for clarification, Nancy,
Yes.
the number that you see in the decrements page has been provided.
Yes.
I did speak with Ron Bathrick, Chairman of the Board of Ed.
Yeah.
And suggested to him that I didn't think this board was gonna be able to live with the 7.37%. So the number that you see there was provided to me by him. Now, I did ask for the breakdown of how they got to that number. They were a little reluctant to provide it, given that their own board hadn't approved it yet. So I can't say for certain whether some of the items that you just mentioned, the 819 aside, overlap how they got to their number.
Yeah, I mean, Christian lists them all in this email, so I'm not pulling
No,
this out
Christian's
of
just
thin air.
answering our questions that we had from the workshop.
Right, but all of the information that he provided ultimately translated into reductions in their budget.
But
because
what
they
I'm
were
saying is that they
overestimates.
gave us the $1.2 million and didn't tell me what line items they're attributable to. So your numbers here, you said to me at the beginning of this meeting, were incremental to the decrements that were in the package that we all received. And all I'm pointing out is, I can't tell you, unfortunately, if some of these cuts, the updated medical insurance, for instance, were already reflected in the number that they gave me.
Right. Again, I'm sure the 818 was included in that $1.2 million, but I also looked
It surely
into.
is. That part,
I
right?
also looked into staff development and professional services, rentals, program development, Medicare.
No, I don't doubt it, but I guess, again, I'm repeating myself, I
Yes.
understand, but, and that may all be accurate. I'm just telling you that I can't say for certainty whether some of the things you're mentioning right now weren't in the balance of the cuts. So there may be some overlap there.
There is overlap, I can tell you that. There is some overlap. Insurance might be one of them. So just to clarify what Tim said, they came to us with the 1.2 million reduction. And you're proposing another 300,000 on top of that.
They came to you.
They went from 7.3 to
Yes.
5.4.
They came to you, or you came to that number in your declinations
They
Again,
did.
after speaking with them?
You just said it.
I
Yeah.
just said, I spoke with Mr. Bathrick and told him I did not think this board was gonna be comfortable with the 7.37% and that they need to consider some cuts. And this is what I got from the Board of Ed via Mr. Bathrick.
And that was the second conversation, after the first conversation we had with Patrick, that we could not pass a budget at 4.4 mils. So they went back. Tim reiterated it with Ron Bathrick, the chairman. They went back to the drawing board and came back to us with this 1.2 million you see here.
So when you say they, you don't mean the entire board, because Tim is concerned that the
No,
entire board doesn't know.
No, well, Patrick
Just Patrick
and the board
and Ron.
and the board. So they had to have discussions with the board to come back to us with 5.4%. Ron happens to be the point person.
Right, but
Patrick.
Tim, didn't you just say that you were not convinced that the board was aware of these numbers?
I didn't say I wasn't convinced. What I said was, Christian did not want to give me the breakdown because the board had not approved all the cuts.
Yes, that's it in a nutshell.
So they were aware of them, but they didn't approve them?
Well, they might not have had a vote on them. The bottom line, let me just reiterate this again. Knowing the 4.4 mill rate increase, to Patrick's credit, he knew that we weren't going to pass this budget. Tim followed up with the chairman of the Board of Ed, Ron Bathrick, and they came back to us with the 5.4, which you see here, or the 1.2 million, which is in the decrements. And you're proposing now another 300,000 on top of that to get down to 4.9, if I understand it correctly.
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
all right, so that sums it up.
I'm surprised by this process. Perhaps, Mr. Frieda, this is what you normally do, but I was not aware of going back to a department head and having them provide a counter proposal, because if the superintendent understood that what he proposed at the workshop would never have been approved, then
Well, no,
why
you-
present that?
You're missing something.
Please.
He wasn't aware of what the other requests were on the town side. When you total everything up, the town in the beginning and the Board of Ed, that was when everyone saw the 4.4 mil increase. Everybody in that room knew that it wouldn't pass.
I think if we were talking about the timing, Nancy, we got this budget one in January. So I forget exactly when I talked to Mr. Bathurst, but it was certainly within the last, no more than the last 3 weeks.
Okay. And again, the town came down by 2.2 million, capital by 1.9, and the BOE, without what I'm recommending, came down by 1.2. Where the BOE is the largest.
Yeah, I know, I understand the point, and I understand the math. I was just trying to clarify, that's all.
I understand.
All right, let's,
And can we also go over the revenue increases that I've listed here?
yes, go ahead.
I think we've already discussed the cash surplus, where, other than the current fiscal year, historically, we have had a fund balance transfer to both appropriated and unappropriated, appropriated for debt service and unappropriated for other reasons, in order to support our budget. So,
A lot of times, though, that was a rollover of prior year surpluses, and that's how we got to that number,
but it was always in the budget.
because Mike's done a good job managing the town.
Okay. I think that this warrants thinking outside the box, not just in terms of declinations, but also looking at revenue increases. So town revenue general, I looked at the town miscellaneous receipts. Again, our year-to-date balance as of end of February is 162. So I thought it was entirely feasible to get that up to 250. Again, if you multiply 162 by 12/8. Within tax collector, as I mentioned before, our interests and liens have been quite high this year. Year-to-date balances of end of February, which was significantly higher than what we budgeted, was $588,000. So I thought that an increase from 475 up to 600 seemed reasonable.
Hey, I don't mean to interrupt you, but could you go back to miscellaneous? I don't see that in the budget. I know it's there somewhere.
That's the sheet that we received that was itemizing all of the things. It is a line item on page
on
7 of the budget, but we also got a breakdown of all of the things that
No, I
go
remember,
into
but I remember, but I'm not seeing any number in this
But that
budget.
is not guaranteed. It happens from year to year. and
Yes, no, I
Right.
understand, but
It's not a guaranteed number that you're going to get that amount.
I guess
every year.
my point, Ingrid, is I don't see any number in the budget we got in our package.
if you look in our
Oh, in town
revenue
general?
budget,
Yeah.
Look on page 7 if you don't mind.
no, not in the budget booklet, but in our revenue reports that we get each month.
Well, I
In
don't,
page 7 says town miscellaneous receipts on the bottom.
Yes.
Oh, down
So
there,
that's
it said
what's
miscellaneous
budgeted.
up there,
That's what's
sorry.
budgeted. But I'm saying in terms of how I came up with that actual number as of the end of February, that's where I got that.
So that's 20 grand a month, right?
Right. Again, I just simply took the number and multiplied it by.
Yeah, and I know Ingrid gave us a listing of what those were not that long ago.
Uh-huh.
What were
Right.
some of the items in there, if you don't mind, the bigger ones?
We had a unclaimed property from the state of Connecticut of $25,000. From the police department, we got some parking violations, permits, copies, photographs for $21,000.
There we go.
We had a previous year insurance claim that went to there. It was a one-time for $5,000.
Okay,
So
This is- we're
there's
get-
a lot of
We're getting all
various
those NICS
things that go
charges.
into it, right?
Yes. The
okay,
surcharges.
I got it, go
The
ahead.
surcharge, yeah.
Yeah. So the grand total that was given to us last month was 132,700,
Mhm.
and it's since gone up to 162. So
Mhm.
that actually jumped up by 30,000, not 20. But again, I'm assuming that it will vary from month to month. And then our town clerk, Stacy Yarborough, actually once again has raised this town clerk $1 fund. And again, if we're looking for revenue and we don't have ARPA funds and we don't have help from our grant list, I think that it's perfectly reasonable to ask, what is the balance of this completely unbudgeted account? And I'm sure there are restrictions on it that limit the use of those funds to support the town clerk budget, but it's an expense that we could cover with it.
Can you
So
go back?
it
You
is
did-
not, I'm sorry. go ahead.
No, you got it, that's fine.
It is not in our operating budget because it has a lot of restrictions. So if she has like a specific project that all the stipulations will apply to it, then she can use it.
Yes.
But I don't think she's gonna be able to use it as please. She has to have specific things.
No, I agree. It's
And
it's
so
something like
it's-
MRSA, right? And there are going to be stipulations.
I
and
think
how
it's a
you
lot
use it.
more because MRSA, you were able to use it for streets and roads and it has a wide of different things to do. I think this is really specific.
Yes, it's
So
specific.
I don't
to
think we
just
could use that.
Right.
to
Can we go
see that
back to the
can
interest
fund
in
for
liens? Did we skip
expenses
that
for
one?
No, we talked about the interest in liens as well. Again, I mentioned this when we were talking at the very beginning of the meeting about tax collection, and in addition to the high rate of tax collection, that there's also a very large sum of money that we've brought in excess of what we budgeted. I think we budgeted maybe 450, and we're currently at 588. I don't expect that to go any higher this year, but it might go up a little bit, and so that's why I thought we might increase the revenue forecast for that particular line item from 475 up to 600.
All right, thank you. Let's cover the debt service fund. Let me ask, sorry to interrupt you. Have we issued any new bonds or notes this year?
We did in November, we asked this when we were going to the revenue budget. That decision gets done at the end of the year, but we haven't used the previous year, but you could use this money for debt payments as well.
Right, but Nancy's saying that we issued new debt in this current fiscal year, did we?
Yes,
Did we get a premium on it or not, you know?
we
We
had
did,
it.
we got a
yeah.
cash premium on it, yes. So maybe it's 80,000 or something like that, so.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess on this particular point, there may be some money here.
Yeah, I believe there will be,
Okay,
yes.
All right,
That would be great.
okay.
And again, we haven't used the 450 in the current fiscal year either. That's a decision to be made. And perhaps it will be precipitated by this budget development process. But aside from that, since I was pretty sure, as a result of that big series of projects in which some were covered by grants and some were covered by debt, that we might have some money put in the debt service fund. So you think the balance in that is around $80,000 right now?
She said that was the premium.
Yeah,
Or Mike said that was the
that's
premium.
my recollection.
Okay.
Roughly 80.
Okay.
I should point out, by the way, since we're on this topic, we've already increased our arrears taxes. We've already adjusted a lot of these revenues with our whole investment strategy in the town in terms of earning over 5% interest on cash. We put our interest income up. So, and we also raised the anticipated tax collection rate 0.25. So we've tried to accommodate the fact that we see increases in revenue that are already in these numbers.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point, which I didn't cover early on, Mike, you're right about that, I mean, the project fund transfers are up 250, the arrears taxes are up, and when I say up, I mean, we budgeted higher is what I mean to say, 300,000. And yes, I think the collection rate, we goosed by a quarter point,
We upped it by a quarter.
a quarter point, yeah,
Yes.
right. Bless you. We also, the pilot came, well, this is in the information, the pilot money, we got our estimate from OPM.
That ties back to largely Quinnipiac University.
Right. Okay, Nancy, I'm not sure if you're through or not, but any of the other members have thoughts, comments on where we are at this point?
On any of the decrements?
On anything related to this budget, yes.
Just a couple questions. On the list of decrements sent to us originally, the OPEB big line did get wiped out from 300,000 to zero. I just wanted to know, does that put us out of compliance with some regulations?
That was my suggestion, Mike. I'll let Ingrid contradict me if I state wrong. I don't believe so. I mean, you know, the rating agencies like us to see that we build up the OPEB fund. As you know, in theory, you're supposed to have an asset just like you do for pensions. You know, honestly, Mike, I see financial statements all day long on municipalities in my job, and unless it's a locale, like New York City, by the way, that mandates that you have a certain OPEB fund, all the municipalities I see have almost nothing. So having said that, did I misstate anything?
No.
Well, that doesn't lead to any derogatory comments either from an auditor or from the bond rating agencies.
Oh, they'll bring it up to you.
Yeah,
Right,
we're gonna bring it
we're
up.
not
Yeah,
like
they'll bring it up.
I mean, what is the offset there versus using more unappropriated fund balance?
We have to have the unappropriated fund balance.
I don't think there's an offset, there's more of a link.
No, in
Yeah.
terms of
Yeah.
what they think is a more critical issue.
Oh, I see.
Oh, the more critical issue? Oh, it's fund balance.
To
gotta be fund
properly manage.
It's fund balance, yeah,
Oh, okay,
fund balance.
really? So so having, or cutting this in half, putting 150 in OPEB and taking another 150 out of fund balance, you don't think that would be a better trade-off?
Oh, I see what you're saying. In other words, reduce the fund balance from 250 to 100, like, is that what you're saying?
Increase the fund balance for the revenue side and restore 150 that's cut.
Oh,
Just
Yeah.
to know, if you consider that the trade-off in the way that,
so then the part of your trade-off scenario would
that
be
the evaluators.
at least there's something in OPEB. That's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might be a trade-off.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, you can always you can adjust that figure between now and April.
Mhm.
Yep.
The other item I just wanted to pick up on was the grand list figure used for for calculating the revenue this year. It doesn't really match what was sent to us from the assessor's office, which I assume is the same paperwork that goes to the state, OPM. Listed in our calculation was a grand list of 3.271 billion, and the paperwork would the chart we received from, I guess it came from the assessor, from finance or whatever, was 3.263 billion. So the difference in the two figures is 7,921,000 of additional real estate, taxable value we have in town. I just want to know is the newer figure correct, or and where would the changes be on this calculation chart that we received? from the assessor.
But we're also using a different percentage at the very bottom of the
Yeah, well,
rentals
that's
as well.
right, that's.
Well, that's what we just said.
different.
That's what we
Yeah,
just said.
That's law.
Yeah, you're right, Mike. I brought the grand list myself. Is it possible that this wasn't the final stamped
Well, it could be.
grand list? Is that possible?
What's also, it is, that's possible. What's also possible is the, any BAA assessments that may have occurred could change that. So we'd have to check that,
Oh,
okay?
yes, I will.
I think it's a valid question, I really do.
Either when the case is won, and settled,
Mhm.
because usually BAA would take it down for,
Well, that's why it might be lower, right? That's what he's saying, right?
no.
This is lower.
No,
we're
this is
doing
higher.
a higher
This
figure.
is higher.
I know, I thought what you were saying is that,
But
Yeah.
my
it says
point,
pre-BA, oh, it does say pre-BA, actually, sorry. Right, it does, yeah.
so,
If we can get an explanation on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good
maybe-
point.
it also,
Yeah.
Mike,
Maybe make a correction.
well, it also could be about personal property offsets that, we didn't need to offset in the January submission. Maybe Gary redid it with the state. We'll check it out though.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good catch, Mike.
then I would ask for a corrected one of these.
Mhm.
That, or an update. Thank you very much.
Anything else, Mike?
No, I think that, we'll ask the caucus, in just a minute, but, we just wanna know from then, since we're going to accept all the, changes, we're gonna say accept, we're working with all the changes that came from the declamations or decrement sheet that you sent us. And just want to know, after this discussion, which additional ones that Nancy is proposing here, both in revenue and expense reductions, which ones do you believe are favorable enough to get a positive vote from this board?
Well, I think Nancy's mentioned a few and Mike commented on a few that probably are ripe for some cuts. I think,
So which ones can we accept this time?
well, I think that's something I'd like to hold on till after the caucus, Mike.
Yeah, I'll just, before we go into caucus, just want to say that a lot of the ones that were presented here, you heard me say, I think we got to look at that. I think there's some room. It may not be the exact amount, but I
Yeah.
think conceptually, yes, there could be some
Okay,
movement.
so
yes.
while we're caucusing, you can caucus
Yeah.
and come up with some numbers and
Yeah.
then we'll
Yeah.
Okay.
discuss that. Okay. We're okay for a brief recess.
Laurie, Jean, or Bob, any questions, comments, pre-caucus?
No.
All right, then, not sure if we need a motion or not, but I make a motion, we recess until 9 o'clock. Anyone care to second that?
Second.
All in favor?
That may be more time than we need.
That's right, we'll reconvene at 9 o'clock.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm gonna call the meeting back to order, post recess. Okay, so Nancy, we've looked at some of your cuts. I think we've got some consensus on a few of them. Ingrid, I'm gonna tell you what they are, if you wouldn't mind jotting them down, please, but I've got them here as well. On the sanitation tipping fees, an additional cut of $45,000. On the central supplies telephone, an additional cut of $10,000. Personnel policy expenses, which is under labor negotiations, an additional cut of $10,000. On the hydrants, an additional cut of $5,000. It won't affect what we're doing tonight, but I think we agree, Nancy, that we should include in the revenue when, it really won't come up till next meeting, but on the revenue side, $75,000 additional, Ingrid, on the debt service for the premium we received this year. And I think Nancy's right. We did not move up the interest in liens. We're running way ahead for the year. So an additional 125 on the interest in liens on the revenue side, if you would, Ingrid. I guess I'll speak for myself and let the other members speak, but We had some conversation a short while ago about the two police officers. You know, I think we all know there's been a lot of reports of additional crime in town. And I've heard even our own legislators bemoan the fact that we've loosened the penalties for offenders, and it's been more and more difficult to put them in jail, which makes them more brazen and more willing to engage in criminal acts around the town. I think it's also it's something that's probably close to the members of our community. They all want to be safe. And so the chief asked for more. The decrements did cut it back. The decrements that we have now have the two police officers for half a year, so 1 FTE. I know, Nancy, you were suggesting that we cut that further. I'm willing to let the townspeople decide that. We do have a hearing coming up, the informational hearing. We'll have another meeting. It is a difficult budget year, as was last year, and I know last year we did not have any new hires, specifically because of a difficult budget year. This is actually worse. We all know that. But I've come to the decision that I'm willing to let the townspeople decide if they'd like to increase public safety in the town. As far as the BOE goes, some good points are raised there. There may be some room for cuts there. But I did consult with the BOE on what they thought was appropriate, and the decrements that were in the package reflect that. I think with respect to the BOE and the town, we need to let the residents decide if they're willing to pay for what's in these budgets. Now, I know the BOE side includes 2 new hires. It did include 3 new hires, I believe, last year. Again, I think that's for the residents to decide. If they come out en masse to the hearing and make clear to this board that they're not willing to support that, then we'll have the chance to make some changes come our next meeting. Or if they're silent, they'll vote with their pens, I guess, at the referendum in May.
So, Tim, you're disagreeing with the point that I made before, that there's actually 3?
I wasn't really addressing the 2 versus 3.
Okay.
I'm not clear what happened, Nancy. You may have more information on that, but either way, there's at least 2 new hires in their budgets. We know, and there may be 3 if you're correct.
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is that we didn't make further cuts to the BOE as you suggested for some of the reasons that I just mentioned. Having said that, I'll open the floor to any other member that wishes to speak.
I think that this is a very difficult year for everybody on this board. It's my first time being on this board, so thanks a lot, everybody. But I do believe that we have to keep in support of what Tim's comments were and let the public help us decide what's the next best thing for this town.
I also agree that I think we should let the public decide. I support Tim's comments, and it's a tough year.
Now, during the presentation, you're going to see me make at the town meeting, because again, I'm the one that stands up there. I'm going to lay it all out, and I'm going to say to the residents that about this being a tough budget year, this is our service model, but this is what's going to cost us this year. And Patrick will present the Board of Ed at the 5.4. We may get some negative feedback. We may have to take that, which we will, and bring it back to the April meeting. But in the end, that referendum, we're going to publicize this referendum. We're going to make everyone aware about this, and we've tried to at these meetings. In the end, I want to hear from the public as to whether or not they liked this service model at this projected cost. That's the question for the residents to decide. That's why this form of government gives the residents the chance to vote. This isn't a council form of government where the council passes the budget.
Would any of the members wish to speak at this time?
I'd like to make a couple of comments. First, regarding the Board of Ed, I would just like to point out that a year ago, when the Board of Ed was asking for a much smaller percentage increase, we made a $250,000 cut. In fact, it was suggested by the Republicans in the decrement list, and the two Democrats absolutely agreed with it. But in addition to that $250,000 reduction, they were able to make that cut without any negative consequences to the students, the faculty, the learning environment, or any of the materials. In addition to making that reduction with a much leaner budget, they also have been able to carry this unbudgeted administrator role, which has been filled since August. But let's say that's an additional $200,000. So that together is a $450,000 swing. And that's at a time when they were really only looking at a $1.4 million increase to their budget. And now we're looking at a 5.4% increase to their budget. Yes, I agree, it started much higher. It started with a 7.4% increase, but still, this is a very substantial increase, and it is at a time that I believe this town is at its financially, we're kind of at a crossroads for a wide variety of reasons. But I don't think that this is the time to be adding 3 new positions. I don't think this is the time to be having very large percentage increases. Having said that, although currently the Board of Ed budget includes a 5.4% increase on the town side, not including capital, there's an 8.5% increase. Again, I cannot say more strenuously enough that it does not seem appropriate to have an 8.5% increase to our town's operational budget at this particular point in time. And lastly, in terms of the safety issue, the perception of our town's safety, individually and collectively. A few months ago, I came before the Board of Selectmen and I asked each individual selectman to comment on a statement that Mr. Frieda had made, that he feels that the people of North Haven should feel safe in this town. And I asked each board member how they felt about that particular statement. Did they agree? Did they disagree? And why? And each of them went through different reasons about things that could be done to enhance safety, preserve it, and perhaps even enhance it. But all 3 were in unanimous agreement that the people of North Haven should feel safe. Yes, there are things that you can do for personal safety and accountability. There are things that can be done at the legislative level. There are things that can be done in terms of our judicial system. And as Mr. Frieda has mentioned, collaboration with state and federal law enforcement. I think all of those things need to continue to take place in order for our public safety to continue to improve. But I do not think that necessarily adding more police officers was something, well, I know for certain it was not something that any of our selectmen mentioned. And I don't think that it is something that necessarily directly correlates with improved safety. And I say that with the utmost respect for our police officers, as well as our firefighters, all of our emergency responders. And I also say that with the utmost respect for our police and fire chiefs. But as we know, police officers cannot be everywhere at all times. They are relying on the people of North Haven. If you see something, say something, and it's those tips that ultimately lead to criminals being apprehended and hopefully brought to justice. But I don't think that this is necessarily something that will benefit our town in terms of creating new positions. So those are the points that I'd like to make.
right, excuse me, sorry, Nancy. Thank you very much. Anyone else before we do some math? All right, I just asked Ingrid to do a little math. I've already done it, but I just want to have a double check on this, just to make sure we get our numbers correct. So why don't we just give Ingrid a minute, and then she and I can compare notes.
I'm sorry, Tim, what was the number that you suggested for reducing hydrants? Was it 10?
5.
5, okay.
Yeah.
Have 7.
Yeah, I got 72, but we need to get the calculation for the total numbers. It won't be that hard, but I just want to make sure we're in agreement.
And the 70 is just on the expenditure side,
Yes, correct.
and then 200 on the revenue side.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll adjust the revenue page for the next meeting. Mike will check into the grand list. I didn't forget about that. We will also get the numbers adjusted based on what Rich said. And I guess while we have some time here, we didn't really talk about Mike Callahan's suggestion that we restore the OPEB by 150. And I think you said, Mike, increase fund balance by 150. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. I guess the only thing there is, I guess we did. The answer was, right, that they would look less favorably on increasing the fund balance, right, than they would on the cut in the OPEB. I think that's what we said, right?
Yeah, or it doesn't have to be 50-50. It's
Right.
whatever Mr. Frieda, Mr. Monaco, and whatever you decide.
Right.
Just leaving it at 0, though, I think is too much of a red herring.
All right, so what do you have for the town side, Ingrid?
For
Total town after the cuts?
side, 63,774,255.
I'm sorry, I apologize. It's gotta be the total, so when Ingrid, is your mic on? Sorry, Ingrid, we need to include the capital and the reserve,
Okay.
because when we do the resolution, we'll do one total for the government
Oh, I
side.
did the total for,
You did the
including
total
the
for-
Board of Ed.
Well, the Board of Ed's not changing here.
Right, I didn't change anything.
Okay, but on the town side, so here's what I got, by the way. I got 65,382,423. That's the sum of the three,
Okay,
the capital, the reserve, and the
Yes, yes.
town, less the
Okay.
70, but see what you
Yeah.
get, okay?
Tim, just to clarify, you're not factoring in the two sources of revenue as a means to reduce the tax levy?
Yes, but not tonight. We're only voting the expenses tonight. We will change the revenue for the next meeting to reflect the two items.
Okay, so then how do we come up with a grand list? We just ignoring that?
Well, the grand
Sorry,
list,
not the grand list, the
we're not doing the mill rate tonight.
mill rate.
We're
Okay,
not.
yes.
That gets done at the next meeting.
okay.
That gets done the May meeting.
Yes, Mike, after the referendum, yes.
But you have to present it at the public hearing.
Okay, so you got that number?
Yes,
Okay, so the total,
Yes.
excuse me one second, Mike. So the total I get, Ingrid, is 130,355,151.
yes.
Okay,
I got that.
give me one more second. All right, then I'm gonna read the resolution, and when I'm done, I'd ask for a second. Resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the public hearing a fiscal year 24-25 town government budget of $65,382,423. I'll take a motion.
Make the motion.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you. Resolved that the Board of Finance recommends to the public hearing a fiscal year 2024-2025 Board of Education budget of $64,972,728. Take a
Make
motion.
a motion.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
No.
No, you're opposed. Is that what you're saying?
Just say opposed.
Opposed. All
Thank
right.
you. Okay.
It's nay. Say nay.
Just clarifying, thank you. Resolve that a fiscal year 2024-2025 budget recommendation of $130,355,151 be presented to the public hearing to be held on Tuesday, April 9th, 2024, with the town government budget to be presented first, beginning at 7 p.m., followed by the Board of Education to begin no later than 8 p.m., with general discussion to follow, as may be warranted. I'll take a motion, please.
I make a motion.
I have a motion, I have a second, all in favor? All opposed?
Opposed?
No way. No, opposed. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Hallahan. All right, thank you to the members. That brings us to the public comment portion of our evening. Well, Sally Buemi.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Sally Buemi, 5 Blossom Drive. I just want, I have a few issues here. On the issue of the contract obligations under personnel policy, it was reduced to 575, and there was a lot of discussion during your meeting about the police contract. So it's, first of all, I'm glad to hear it's been renewed, but there will not be any retroactive pay because it expires June 30th, 2024. But I heard you say that 575 will go to the payroll line and
So-
all the lines that are affected. Many of our lines in our budget are affected by wages, you know, the Social Security,
Right.
pension amount, by contracts, excuse me. Wages are affected, pensions, benefits, Social Security. So do you mean that 575 will be spread out?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
And
In the adjusted pages, you'll see the 575 being reduced on contract obligations, and then the rest of the lines will increase, whether it's payroll or whatever else it may be.
right,
But the 575 was in there before we knew the police contract was settled.
I understand that, yeah. Because originally, the initial amount for that line was 750. So the Republican caucus did reduce it from, 780, reduced it from 780 to 575. But with no retroactive benefits, that 575 still seems high. Certainly if it's gonna go to wages, I mean, the current wages are about 6 million.
Yeah.
That 575 is almost 10%, so it's an awful lot of money to be spread
Okay.
for a contract that's expiring. So I still think there's room for a little movement on that
Okay.
line. I think you just have to,
Now the contract's been settled, Sally,
Yeah.
Ingrid and Rich can talk. I
could
mean, I did,
tweak it, okay.
I did talk with Rich about this, and I did misstate when I said it included the arrearages, but they're getting a $5,000, I think, per person.
We gotta wait on that, okay? We have to have the Board of Selectmen meeting on this,
Okay.
okay?
All
So,
right, then I'll say this.
Yeah.
Mr. Monaco went over some of the numbers with me. It includes obviously more than just the salary. There's other items in there.
Right, I that's why I opened my remarks with,
Yeah.
I understand that a new contract affects many lines
Yeah, okay.
in
Yeah,
our
okay.
expenditure budget. So maybe now that, in anticipation of it possibly settling.
Right.
With the approval of the Board of Selectmen. An analysis can be done to determine its total impact on those lines, and maybe some movement can be made on that line. So we'll see, because everything else is current.
Right.
It's
Right.
quite remarkable and quite an accomplishment to get all the contracts current. In my early days on the Board of Selectmen, I would vote to renew a contract that expired a month or two later. And we were right back, so that contractual obligation line had to constantly be fed like, a hungry beast.
Yeah.
So I just thought there was a little play there. And then I thought it was during the discussion of Mrs. Barrett's suggestion of a further reduction on the medical line for medical insurance active retirees. Mr. Frieda stated that there's no play in those numbers, but I think there's some play. In fact, your own declination took off 647,000 from the original 9.8 million. So hopefully, like last year or previous years, we'll get some last minute claims history, and there might be some additional play. Whether I don't think it'll be near $1 million, but there could be something. So to say that there's no play in that number, I thought was a little improper, because you yourself took off 647,000.
So let me explain that. So
Yeah.
I'm the one who's involved with the insurance company.
Sure.
So we work with the actuaries to tell us what the renewal rate is. So we took some off, but the reason I addressed this $1 million is because we don't know what March numbers are going to be and April numbers are going to be. But what we do know, the February numbers jumped, or the January numbers jumped also. So we didn't get any break. Our claims history after the lower month started to go higher. So at this point in time, there's nothing we can do. Now, maybe if we get the next 2 months before the budget referendum and those numbers go down, perhaps. but-
That's what I'm saying. But if the claims history hasn't helped us for the last 2 months, the initial figure was 9.8 million. Then how was it able to go down to 9.2 with your declination?
Because the estimate was much higher than what we ended up with. We were projecting so high
Okay.
so we were able to take some off because we did have a lower month.
Yes.
But
Yeah, and we talked about that quite a bit at our Board of Selectmen workshop, that sometimes it's safer to overestimate, but that's a significant overestimation.
And-
But I just wanted to clarify that it's possible that there could be some play in that number, depending upon most recent claims history.
It could. Can I make
So that's
one-
all I wanted
All right,
to clarify, and
okay.
you seem to agree. As far as the police, I think I agree that it is not. We should not be adding the two for the half year, and I'll tell you why. It's true that there were no new hires in the police department for this current year, but the previous 2 years, there were 3 and 3. So the taxpayers of North Haven, by voting in favor of those budget referendums, were supporting the police hires, 6 total, which is a considerable percentage increase in the number of officers. And then if you take into account, we added a supernumerary to the high school so that our officer didn't have to be stationed there all day, to free him or her up for other duty. It's really budgetary moves, and not in the past 3 years have effectively added 7 new positions to the police department. So I think that is a significant sign on the part of the taxpayers that we are supporting more police officers. The problem is this year the grand list has offered us very little. Just a few $100,000 really, if that, in new tax revenue. But the first selectman has told us, and I believe him because no one works harder at economic development than our first selectman, that in the next 18 to 24 months, we should have some significant development. So I think that we just need to wait a little bit for the economic development and incremental tax increases to come into play to support additional positions in public safety. And I feel secure in saying that because, again, we have shown significant recent additions in the police department. The final thing I want to say, Mr. Chairman, is I want to give a little history lesson. I love history, and I just want you to let me say this. Our town was incorporated in 1786, and in 2019, 233 years later, we cracked the $100 million threshold in our budget. This budget, 5 years later, is now $130 million. And I've projected that with these types of increases, we're at almost $9 million increase in spending, our budget will be at $200 million in 2032, meaning it took us 233 years to get to 100 million, and it's going to take us 13 years to get to 200 million. I don't know what the answer is. I know that all municipalities, and I'm sure Mr. Frieda hears this from his peers, other chief elected officials, it's a big problem. And what I'd like to say is I'm always very impressed at Board of Selectmen meetings when the first selectman talks about his many appointments and involvements in many boards and other agencies like Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, South Central Conference, Council of Government, the Small Town Council, Public Safety. You're in there, and you are chairman of a lot of these because obviously you are held in great esteem by your colleagues, your fellow chief elected officials. So I have a suggestion. I have two.
Say no? Is one say no?
No,
yeah.
Somebody has to start talking about regionalization.
We are.
And you and I have talked about this a little bit over the years. And I really think, especially in the areas of education, public safety, and public works, regionalization is the only long-term solution to where budgets are going. And as I said, it took us 233 years to get 100 million, and we're going to be at 200 million soon. So I think regionalization is something that you have to stress in all of these important boards that I commend you for somehow finding the time to work on.
How about if you put that on the next Board of Selectmen agenda? Because I am involved with that, and I can give you an update during that meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Because that's, I'm glad to do that. And this might sound a little crazy, but I'm going to say it. Next time you have lunch with the governor, here's what I think you should bring up. And you could tell him it's from the third selectman because I believe he was once the third selectman. We have a state police. We have a state Department of Transportation that plows our highways. I think we need a state fire department. A state fire department that will go to accident sites on our interstate highways. Because this board, for many years, has heard our fire chief say over and over again that the fact that our little local fire department has to go to so many accidents on the Wilbur Cross, on 15 and on 91, and he's given us lane statistics, mileage statistics. It is a tremendous strain on any municipality that happens to have an interstate going through it, and we have two. And I also want to say that in the past 3 years, two of our apparatus, our fire apparatus, were seriously damaged while at highway scenes. Is that correct? One of them was out for a year. Now that might call into play some sort of evaluation of how we park our apparatus at accident scenes, but it's my basic understanding that they're there as protection for the first responders on the ground that are attending injured people on the road. I think that it is a tremendous burden for municipalities like ours to have to answer these calls. And I think we need a state fire department that will answer accidents on the highways. And I think that will tremendously reduce the strain on our fire department's resources, and it will dramatically reduce the number of simultaneous calls that we get, because when you go to an accident scene on the highway, you're there a long time. So regionalization and a state fire department, that's what I want.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wemme. Mr. Katz?
Good evening, Sherman Katz, Sherwood Drive. I'm sorry, Sally covered a lot of things I was gonna talk about. And I'm gonna start off with something that I wasn't gonna talk about. This thing about the state roads and the fire protection on the state roads. I was at a fire commission meeting and I brought up the possibility of using a dump truck, specially equipped, to block traffic, instead of using a fire apparatus that costs us $500,000. I don't want to tell you what his answer was. Ask him. It wasn't nice. This budget proposal now is somewhere around 2.6 mil increase, thereabouts, which is somewhere around 6 or 7%. With all the changes, I didn't get a chance to do the exact calculation. I'm here because some people have contacted me and asked me what's going on with our budget, with our taxes. I said, I don't have an answer for you. I'll go to the meetings and I'll see what I can do. This town has a lot of seniors. Probably, Mike, 30-40%. Seniors that received 3.2% increase in their Social Security last year. 3.2% on anything from $1,500 to $2,000 a month. Not very much. They can't really stand much of a more increase in taxes, because it's not just your house, it's your car. And I'm gonna leave it at that. They are not happy at all.
Sherm, the only thing I would say, listen, I appreciate your point. I think the best thing they could do is turn out at the meeting, right? I mean,
These people don't turn out to me. They don't even go to vote in the referendums.
I know, but let me finish.
You know how it's getting worse and worse. They're afraid to talk, or they're too tired, or too sick, or too old, or whatever it is. But they don't just show up. We've seen that in all of our elections lately.
Well, Sherm, you know that the residents in favor of the Board of Ed always show, okay? And they're vocal, oftentimes, about the support for the Board of Ed, right? And this dichotomy that you're talking about has been going on for as long as I've been in this town. And I understand some people who are a little elderly might not be able to make a meeting at 7 o'clock at night, but somehow they got to find some way to make their voices heard, right? Because we do listen, right? We read the paper, we listen to people at the meetings, and we have to take that into account. But the only way we're going to know is if they make their voice heard, whether it's at that meeting or by writing it to the paper, or Nancy asked the question about the email box, and did I get any emails in? I said to her, no, and as you heard me say, I think I actually double checked because I was surprised I hadn't gotten any. So there are other ways that residents can make their voices heard, and I would suggest, if you can, pass the word as best you
I
can.
keep telling them, come to a meeting, write into the officials, write into the board.
Or come out to vote, Sherm. Come
And
to
yes,
vote.
and definitely come out to vote.
Right.
Yeah. Some seniors have asked about a second bus at the senior center. They thought that they were supposed to have one, that there was one in the budget, but they never got their second
Yeah,
bus.
I think it's on order.
It is
It is on
It's on order,
It's on
yes.
order. It takes a
So
while
that'll
to-
satisfy those people. Quick question, what do you think about the state looking into doing motor vehicle taxes again,
Well, you mean,
taking it over?
I don't see them doing it, Sherman.
I know, they talked about it every couple of years they bring it up.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
I'm leaving some things for the selectmen meeting. I don't think I wanna get into anything else. I can't come up with any ideas of how to, I don't like the word cut the budget, reduce the budget.
Mhm.
Cuts is kind of a terrible word, it's the connotation is terrible. We have to reduce it, or we have to, anyhow. I have no answers, I don't know enough about it anymore, I've been so far from it. But I'm sure you're gonna try and do the best job. Mike, you said that you would like to see a 1 mil increase. I'm gonna ask you a question, and it's a
Yes.
rhetorical question now. If the mill rate increase would be 2.67, would you recommend that the people don't pass it?
No, what I would say, Sherman, is I would say to the people, this is the cost of the existing service model. If you like the services that we have, this is what it's gonna cost this year. If you choose not to like the services and vote against it, the following categories may be affected. That's what I would say.
Okay. All right, let's see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Katsas. Anyone else this evening?
Hi, Jenny Colwell, 69 Kimberly Circle. I'll be very quick because I also have not had dinner.
I'm not getting any now.
I have a couple of quick questions. Last year, there were no positions added to the town side of the budget. Is that correct?
No.
Only to the Board of Ed.
Correct.
Okay. I thought there were 2 police officers added last year because they asked for 3 and then got 2.
No,
but did that change?
I believe Sally was correct. There was none last year. I remembered 3 the year before. She actually remembered 3 before that, which I didn't, but there was none last year.
Okay. And then in terms of just thinking outside the box when we're looking at services, I personally, as a resident, would favor when people use, and I've brought this up before, people use the dump, that if they're dumping large amounts of materials and garbage, that maybe there's, a cost to, a truckload versus, you're bringing your recycling to the recycling center to reduce some of the cost of tipping fees. Because I have a small Prius, and if I go to the recycling center, I'm getting rid of a couple things, and I see people in big trucks dumping things that weigh a lot, and I don't, I personally would rather see a little bit more even in terms of services. So I would be open to having to pay a cost in order to make it a little bit more even. And then the last piece, another thing that came up during the workshop that I still don't understand is why we are paying a consultant to plow the fire department's driveways and do their.
I believe we settled that. actually.
We settled that.
We I'll let Ingrid explain, but.
Go ahead, Ingrid.
Yes, Public Works is going to.
We're doing-
Public Works is going to
Yes.
do it. Thank you, because that never made any
Right.
sense to me whatsoever. Appreciate that. And then the last piece is, there's no way I can support this budget because, it's very easy to say we care about our firefighters and we appreciate the work they're doing, but we are down to 16 volunteers with 4 probationary. And given the fact that there'll be no new personnel added again this year to the career, we're probably gonna have to combine a volunteer company and end up with just one with 20 people to respond. So to me, it's frightening that people, you ask, do you feel safe in this town? I'm not sure that I feel safe, especially being up at Northern Washington Avenue where we've got, multiple not high rise, but like 3-level
Right.
buildings that, that potentially are gonna, not even potentially, but will need services at some point in time. And to know that you could call 911 and not have a response, having lived through a fire where it is literally seconds. And I had a cat that was stuck in my apartment and I couldn't get her out. And if the firefighters hadn't gotten there right away, she would have died. And the rest of my life, every time when I was looking at where I would live, I would never live in a 2-story building because I always knew that if I had kids and they were trapped in a house, I needed to be able to get back at them just from that one experience. So I really think that, we've been ignoring the fire department for a long time. I know we have added in the last couple of years ago, we were doing 2 at a time. But when you're looking at 10 firefighters on duty with one shift right now at 11, which generally runs at 10 because of people, firefighters being out, I can't support that. So anyway,
Okay.
thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Don't see anyone else. Since I appear we're done with public comment, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.